everyone for joining us. I know Dave didn't want to be here, but he is out of town training for work, so he can't join us. But I appreciate everybody taking the time. I do think this is one of the more important things that we do, get to know each other a little bit, be able to talk about strategy and what we want to see as a council, get to know and have fun while we're doing it. So this is one of my favorite places to be. So I'll follow the views, and I think this is my 13th one of these, so. Lucky 13, and apparently it's appropriate. But thank you, I'll ask everybody to just engage, ask lots of questions, work together. Don't worry about what you're concerned about. Let's make sure we work together and do things for the city.
Awesome, thank you for that kickoff. We're gonna get started. Before we do, if you haven't noticed on the screen here, we have a friendly reminder about taking the board tendencies quiz. If you have not yet had an opportunity to do that, it is quick and easy. You can use this QR code to bring it up on your phone. And you're gonna want to know that tendency for you. That'll be helpful in one of the first workshops that we're gonna do together. All right, we're gonna try the remote clicker. I'll take me to do the Rob next slide. Okay, there we go. So just a little introduction to us. My name is Lauren Palmer. This is Megan Dodge. I'm in hiding back here. You'll see more from her later. Our company is called EverStrive Solutions. So we're a full service public sector consulting firm. We do a lot of things as you see on the screen, but really love to do work like this, where we work with governing bodies and help you all set your strategic vision and thank you. Set your strategic vision and learn to work better together. It is a real joy to be here with you all in such a beautiful space and to get invited to come back. Some of you I met last year when we helped you set your strategic priorities. Megan was not here last year, but I know she visited with some of all of you in advanced student conversations. The downside of consulting is a lot of times that we come in and we kind of work with the community for a moment in time and then we leave, and we don't really get to see through a project and the impact. So it's really rewarding for us to get to come back this year and see the project that you made or the process, the progress that you made on your strategic plan to get to help you continue that. Okay, so I want to just give you kind of a quick roadmap of what you can expect over the next couple of days. I know all of you have an agenda for the event, a couple caveats on that. Our commitment to you is that we will start and end on time, but beyond that, there may be some fluidity in the times that you see on your agenda. I'd ask you to just trust us. We'll kind of manage the agenda based on how the conversation's going, and might let some things go a little long and other things short so that we can really help you get the most out of the experience. But today is really all about capacity and helping you all learn a little more quickly about yourselves and each other. And the way that you all work together as a team, as a governing body. So we're going to do a series of different exercises that today really are focused on just helping you kind of build your capacity as a team. And that's really foundational work leading into tomorrow. So tomorrow morning, you're going to have a refresher presentation on the strategic plan, and we're going to take you through an exercise to really give the council an opportunity to spend more time thinking about that strategic plan and interacting with staff as staff is starting to move into the implementation phase of that work. So giving you all an opportunity to provide additional guidance and make sure that planning is going in the direction that you want it to go. And then we'll conclude tomorrow with a conversation on your new support and a discussion. Before I move on, I want to yield to Tansy. Is there anything else that you want to share in terms of context, which is what you hope to get out of the experience over the next couple of days?
No, I'll simply just thank everybody. I know everybody's got lots of committing 2 days is a big deal. We value the time. The staff, I think, are really excited tomorrow to make sure that as we work on the strategic plan that we continue to move together. Everybody feels like that's a collective effort. So again, thank you for being here.
All right, anytime we do facilitation work with groups, we like to do just some foundation study of ground rules or just reminders for how we can all be successful working together in the space. So just a reminder, and Mary and Tansy both kind of teed that up, really just encourage you to do your best to be fully engaged and present. I know there are lots of other demands on your time. Some of you have already told me you need to step out for other commitments. If you have to step out to take a call, obviously do what you need to do. understand that. But there are lots of distractions in the room and on our devices, so as much as you can, just try to really be fully present. You all have made the sacrifice of this time to be together, and we wanna make sure you can maximize what you can have. You can participate by listening and sharing. So if you are a person who tends to be a little more assertive about sharing your feedback, this might be a time where you can kind of think about taking a step back and letting other voices come forward. And on the flip side of that, if you are a person who tends to be a little more passive and waits for the conversation to kind of play out before you engage, I really challenge you this weekend to put your voice forward, because it's really important to hear from everyone. We are gonna do a variety of different activities. Sometimes you'll be working on your own, sometimes you'll be working in small groups, sometimes you'll be doing large group discussion. So we've really tried to design it to have opportunities that feel comfortable for everyone. So find the space where you can really bring your voice forward to you. Consensus. What's great about the way we designed this workshop is you've already done your priority setting, that happened last year. So we hope there won't be a lot of disagreement, consternation, but just in the course of the conversations that may come up, there may be some things that you all don't see eye to eye on. And that's okay, that's a healthy part of democratic governance. But we really want to encourage you in this space to strive to focus on the areas where you do have alignment. And some tricks that you can use to help with that is to stay curious and to stay in positive intent. If you hear something that doesn't sit quite right with you, approach that with curiosity. Ask follow-up questions of your colleague. Really try to figure out where they're coming from. If you may realize you have more in common than you originally thought. You can practice this little trick of yes instead of no, but just kind of a different spin of how you can build upon an idea instead of immediately shutting it down. And then finally, relax and have fun. We are going to do a lot of work. And if everything goes well, you will feel exhausted at the end of this. But we want you to enjoy the time together as well. We've got some little pipe cleaner doodad out of your seats. We're not doing any kind of particular activity with those, they're just for fun, they're just for you to kind of doodle with. Sometimes it's easier to stay engaged if our hands are active. So just enjoy the time together. Okay. With that, I am gonna hand it off to Megan to get us started with the questions.
All right, so to kick it off, good afternoon, everyone. Just want to do a fun icebreaker and hear from each of you about just thinking about the year ahead and using one or two words to describe what you hope to intentionally bring into the next year. Of course, there's no right or wrong answer. It could be about your work on council or something in your personal life. Maybe they're one and the same in some areas, but this is just a chance to kind of start thinking about the year ahead and visioning and our intentions. So, would like to kick us off. Be brave. First one.
I'll do two.
Awesome. Thanks. Awesome.
One word is momentum.
Momentum. Great.
Second word, solidarity.
Collaboration.
Collaboration. Great. Who else?
Clarity.
Clarity. What are you gonna do here?
I was also gonna say momentum and alignment.
Alignment. So great. Yeah. And these are all kind of things I was hearing in our one-on-one interviews too, so some of this is not that surprising. Who else? Yeah.
So transparency and success, achievement, something along those lines.
Achievement.
Yeah.
And transparency. Great. Thank you. Who else wants to jump in?
I think education or education.
Education for each other and the community. Wonderful. Not gonna make everyone go if they don't want to, of course, just a requirement, this isn't school, but who else has something?
Or you said, Jason?
First, to make somebody go.
We have accountability over here. Accountability,
Efficiency and thoughtfulness.
efficiency and thoughtfulness, great
Engagement.
engagement. Anyone else want to offer? I'll let that silence sit for a minute. Those awkward silences can be strategically has to, it's a little truth to right. Okay, so I think these are all just great themes for us to think about, not only for the next couple days together, but the year ahead too. And I think like as we're working together, hopefully we can feel those things and feel them and then figure out how we bring them into the new year, working together as the council and staff. So thank you for sharing. One last pause, if anyone wants to jump in. All right, I'm gonna hand it off to Laura now to start talking about the 4 tendencies.
All right, well, everyone is taking the test. We are gonna spend a little time over the next hour learning more about core tendencies and hopefully using this framework to help you with your capacity building with each other. As you were going around the room, I heard some words that really popped out to me. I heard education, I heard accountability, I heard momentum. All of those things I think will be important and will pop out in the conversation as we get into core tendencies. So the 4 tendencies is a framework that was developed by Gretchen Rubin. She's an author and a researcher. Most of this research was based on qualitative interviews and feedback with all kinds of people. In developing the assessment that you all took, she worked with a research analytics firm to stress test and refine those questions to really make sure they got the information that she wanted to capture. She also developed a geographically and demographically diverse survey instrument to make sure it was statistically valid with the US population before fully developing this framework. And since that time, more than 3.5 people worldwide have taken this assessment as kind of the foundation for research. Gretchen is an upholder. We're going to think more about what that means. But this research is really all about how people respond to expectations. So I'm sure in your day jobs, you've done different kinds of personality profiles and management assessments. Okay, this is not a comprehensive review of your personality profile, okay? It's really limited to this idea of expectations. So take it for what it is and don't read too deep into it. Gretchen herself describes this as a practical rather than a diagnostic tool. It's really meant to be useful in the way that you interact with people, particularly in the workforce. It's not meant to be like a rigorous academic classification system for how people operate. We use this a lot in the work that we do with cities and counties because it answers this question: how do people respond to expectations, both inner expectations and outer expectations? So this may be pretty obvious. Inner expectations are the expectations we set on ourselves, our personal goals, our personal objectives. Outer expectations are placed on us by external, either your boss, your supervisor, the people in your family, the needs that they have from you. Those expectations are coming from our exterior. We really like this framework because it's simple. There's 4 categories. So when you're doing this exercise in a group, it's easy to kind of remember who falls into what tendency. You don't have to remember, the 35 categories of the Clifton Constraints Finder. So it's really a simple way to get some quick information about your team that may help you learn in the way that you all interact. So our objective today, for like the next hour together, we're hoping to accomplish 2 things. Number 1, we're hoping you learn a little bit more about yourself. It can help you set up situations in a way that will make you most successful in achieving your aims. And we also hope that you will learn more about each other and their tendencies in a way that will help you reduce conflict and just engage with each other. So we're going to get into it. We're going to start with a roll call. Okay, who are our upholders? You got several. Rob, a couple of your council members, right? Great. All right, who are our obligers? Okay, let's see. Again, 4 council members, right? None of our staff are obligers. That's good. Who are our questioners? All right, we got a couple. And what about the rebels? Yeah. This is not uncommon.
Even in this.
Black. And especially in the public sector, rebels sometimes aren't always drawn to the public sector, but there's usually 1 or 2, and that's awesome. So we are going to talk about all these, and it's great that you got all represented among the team. That means you are bringing all the talents to the table. It's not fun to say. Alright, so this is kind of the framework. So at the top, upholders generally tend to be great at meeting both inner and outer expectations. Questioners tend to resist outer expectations, but are great at meeting their inner expectations. Obligers are kind of the flip side of that. Obligers are awesome at meeting the expectations placed on them by others. Obligers really struggle to meet their own inner expectations. And rebels are just awesome, they're not having any of it. They resist all the expectations, okay? So that's just kind of like how all these pieces fit together, and we're gonna talk through. Alright, so we are gonna start with our upholder friends. Okay, so show us again, we have 4 upholders. Okay, great. So upholders embrace both inner and outer expectations. That is really a cool superpower. These are people who are self-motivated and don't need a ton of accountability to get it done, whatever it is. These are awesome people to have on your team because they will do their work and do it great and don't need a lot of oversight, pushing and momentum from you to get after it. They tend to be super reliable. They are often very interested in rules and regulations. Upholders love structure. That kind of helps them keep motivated and keep after their work. We do this, cities and counties. Oftentimes it's the police chief who's, hands up an upholder. Kind of that command structure tends to appeal to upholders. These are the people who set goals and don't miss them. So, these are the people who are gonna get up at 5 AM every day to go for the run, regardless of if there was a council meeting that went till midnight last night. Really love consistency and meeting those expectations. I'm comforted by that structure of meeting expectations. Now, each of the tendencies is awesome in its own way, and each of the tendencies has kind of an Achilles heel that you have to watch out for that can be kind of holding you back. So with upholders, we talk about this need to watch out for a phenomenon called tightening. So tightening is when upholders get into a situation where the expectations are murky or unclear, they sort of respond to that by layering more expectations on top of more expectations. So what that tightening starts to look like for upholders is like, instead of saying, I'm gonna work out 3 times a week, it becomes, I'm gonna work out every day, no matter what, no matter how exhausted I am. Or language like, we're gonna do that as much as it's feasible, starts to become, we're gonna do that always, no matter what. And can get a little rigid. The other thing about upholders, they're awesome team players because they get things done. Sometimes upholders struggle in the supervisory role because they sometimes aren't super sensitive about others on their team who need more accountability. Upholders kind of bring the attitude of like, I can do it, why can't you just figure it out and get it done? When we know that other people are motivated in different ways. And so upholders really have to be intentional about setting that accountability on their teams. Okay. With each of these tendencies, we're going to talk about this idea of tipping. So nobody is 100% any one thing. There are some upholders who tend to be more motivated by their inner expectations, and they tend to tip toward the questioner category. And upholders who tend to be a little more motivated by the outer expectations kind of tip toward a lighter. So as we talk about those other categories of upholders, you might feel yourself identifying more with one or the other of those areas. All right, so we're gonna have a little discussion. I know we have like a grouping of 3 upholders over here. I might encourage one of you to pop up and find another spot in the room, but just kind of where you're seated, if you want to just turn to each other, a group of 2 or 3, just a little dialogue. If you're an upholder, just talk with each other. Does this resonate for you? What kind of lands? What maybe do you disagree with? If you are not an upholder, think about who in your life might be an upholder. Maybe you live with an upholder. Or share a story or an example of how you've seen this play out. And then is there anything that you understand better about them by starting it? So we're just gonna take 2 or 3 minutes, talk with each other, and then we'll come back together.
You're gonna, you're taking this out? Yeah. Oh, where are the?
Yeah.
You know, like, up here. So you weren't a.
To do it.
So, what they shared about the tipping point, like I do feel so it's so I know you still more motivated to finish on society, her expectations, they don't see the work, obviously. It certainly was this, like certainly like.
Yes.
But in the first, clean out your. One of the thoughts I had, one of resonated, so, the expectations that people place on themselves, and the expectations of others. Like sometimes they're not insane, like. My wife's like, maybe I've been arguing on Sunday nights about, but I think part of it was like, I was feeling. Get that fixed, there's like a lot of things. It's fire on people. And they're just. Obviously, all these little things, so. You know, what it made me feel is like, in that way, she sees where it's our expectations. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I find it like.
You know, when I'm hearing, I move there. Yeah. You know what? Probably in 4 years. Not too much. I would think about the weeks. Yeah. Okay. But I would bet you money.
There's discipline that's different too.
Oh, yeah, if I
That's
was
what
my
my
heart.
kids tell me too.
But they don't.
No, there's. No, my wife was that's what when I stated. I also feel like work. So I think that's what.
I'm gonna be, and sometimes managers.
Here, so. I don't want to be. I don't care. Yeah, it's.
You're getting a bigger picture. I just don't know. And it's good to have.
Think about it in the context of leadership, like, leadership sometimes goals. Say that inner and outer expectations, like as a leader, I think there's a lot of expectations for it. So I think really good confident about the situation expectations. You may or may not direct, so you know, a lot, other lessons, take an approach to the decisions you make and how you like to knowing that, I'm thinking about that, about leaders. Kind of, unfortunately, this.
But I'm also coming from once a week or something.
Let me interrupt your conversation and ask you to come back together. All right, I love that you're having great dialogue. Don't worry, I'm gonna give you more opportunities to chat in just a minute. But I want to ask us to come back together and share a little bit about what you talked about in your group. So I'm gonna start and let our upholders share. Upholders, what do you think? Did this sound familiar? Rob, I'm looking at you.
Yeah, yes, it did. And particularly both the inner and the outer. And we talked a little bit about, when you need to, we talk about it from a council standpoint of when you're in a leadership role, like sometimes that outer, you do feel the pressure of expectations and how that can make you feel. as wanting to live up to people's expectations, but knowing that you're never gonna live up to everybody's expectations, like whether you're in a leadership role from a staff standpoint or from a council standpoint.
What's awesome about upholders is because you balance both inner and outer expectations, you're very good at setting boundaries and knowing limits and capacity. So upholders are gonna hold a line when it's like, we can't do that, or that's gonna cut into my personal time for the thing I need to do for my health. And that's really powerful. We're gonna talk about how obligers kind of struggle with that, but so upholders tend to be more resilient against burnout. Cause they do a better job of maintaining that balance.
Can I push back on that just for a
Please.
minute?
Yes.
As you were saying that, I was thinking, well, cause I am an upholder, thinking I'm not that way. I feel I'm always burning at both ends, cause
Yeah.
my brain wiring is low.
Yeah,
I can't sit.
The ability to say no is actually really hard.
yeah. You all are probably, what I was mentioning here, you're probably tipping more toward those outer expectations and kind of tipping into obliger zone. What else? Other thoughts? You all talked about being an upholder. Do others feel like, did this feel like you when you got your results? Do you say, oh yeah, that's me?
What was your example of council meeting going late one night and then up at 5 AM the next morning? That's.
Yeah, right? Go, go, go. Go, right. Did anyone talk about someone else in your orbit who you have identified as an upholder? Does anybody live with an upholder? Oh, okay, tell us more about that.
My wife is, she's a
Okay.
principal of the school, and like everything's deadline set, everything has to be perfectly based and with it.
Yeah.
It's driving me insane.
I'm sure mutual.
Yeah.
Do any of our upholders exceed the speed limit on the interstate? Or, okay, you're
Very
comfortable with that?
There's a limit.
There is a limit there.
Could you pull that aside?
Alright. Did anybody kind of learn anything? Is there anything that you understand better about upholders now from having your conversations? Oh, Tansy's on your head. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, so Councilmember Morris really talked about this idea of how quickly you can commit to something, internalize it, move forward, and sometimes feeling like he's leaving, not connecting with other people, or can't understand why people are not with him. And so I think that that's a really interesting interpersonal kind of dynamic that had.
Well, you mentioned it's struggling sometimes in like a supervisory role.
Yeah.
And having that empathy for the person on your team that is just not getting it, or maybe doesn't show that same kind of commitment, motivation to that mission or goal.
Yep.
And you tend to want to have the rest of the group kind of continue forward and find a replacement or whatever it is, instead of figuring out what the actual issue might be and bringing it back in the fold. And so there's an element of that.
I'm glad you resonate with that. I mean, in Gretchen's literature, she talks about like, upholders are great at holding themselves accountable, but struggle with holding others accountable because it's like it's so ingrained in you. Like, I'm gonna get it done. I haven't other people figured this out. So interesting. Okay, anything else anyone wants to share about upholder? Please.
I have a little bit about, I'm the obliger, well, I do have one uphill trait, it's like, I have a thing called, I think I talked to you about, it's 9 p.m., 9 a.m. Okay. The goal is always 9 p.m. to get out, to do our business, because why, though I'm tired, most of the rest of us are not, and coffee too. So I'm always cognizant and respectful of the body to make sure that we get out in the time and manner, so we're supposed to get some semblance of sleep and be able to function and work the next day. But at the same token, it depends on what we have on our agenda too. If we have a long public hearing, if we have neighbors that have concerns that need to speak to us, we all need a commitment when we sign up to do this. We're here for our community, so sometimes it could be 9 a.m. I don't want it to be. I will never intentionally try and make it that long, but still flexible to the point that we need to We're there to do the community, to our neighbors and the city's business, and we need to be able to focus and get that done. And even if we have to stay longer than we'd like.
And you said you're an
I
Elijah,
am like,
that your team work beautifully for when we talk about Elijah, because what you're describing to me, like, that sounds like Elijah, because if you were tipped more toward upholder, you would be more what I was talking about with Rob, like holding the line on capacity, like, no, it's gonna be 9 AM because all the other things.
the goal is to always get out soon, obviously.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts? Well, I'm so excited to talk about our friends who are the questioners. Okay, remember first thing. And Tansy's a questioner, yes. Okay, let's talk about the questioners. So questioners tend to resist the outer expectations, are awesome at meeting their own inner expectations. So in other words, to meet an outer expectation, they have to kind of turn it into an inner expectation. And we'll talk about what that means and how it works. So questioners are awesome members to have on your team because they are total knowledge junkies. Okay, they are gonna thrive on getting all the information, figuring out all the different options, looking at all the data, talking to all the people, and really doing all the analysis and thinking it through before figuring out the path forward. They are great to have on the team to play that devil's advocate role and really challenge others to make sure, have we really thought through every angle on this? To know that we are making the best and the smartest decision. Understanding the why is really the key for cracking the nut of your questioner friends. When I said they have to convert an outer expectation into an inner expectation to own it, that's what that means. They've got to get to, why am I being asked to do this? What is the purpose? What is the mission behind this? Before they are really gonna feel bought in and want to make that an inner expectation they want to achieve. Sorry, very emphasizing this. Questioners also value effective and efficient systems. Questioners are great at process improvements. They're problem solvers, okay? And they don't want to just solve the problem, they want to figure out the smartest, most efficient way to get it done. So they really kind of thrive on efficiency strategies. And then this last thing down here, their kind of Achilles heel is that sometimes questioners can suffer from analysis paralysis, okay? They love that data, they love that information, but sometimes they can ask questions in a way that feels annoying to the rest of us, like, geez, how much more do you need us to get where we're going? So we talk about with questioners really having to identify what is their information threshold. Really helping them understand and help you understand, okay, I cannot research every last piece of fact about whatever the topic of the day is, but really help me understand what are the core pieces of information that you need to be able to make a decision and move forward. One of my favorite things about questioners is that although they love to question other people, questioners tend to hate to be questioned themselves. So you have to kind of watch out. Okay, it comes from a place of their gift and their talent, because questioners know, like, I've done the research, I've really thought through this, done all the analysis. Why are you questioning me? Because you know that I've read every last page of the packet and I know this stuff. So that is just kind of a fun thing that you have to kind of wade through with the questioners. Some of you might live with a questioner if you've been in a situation where you are hand washing your dishes for a month because your questioner loved one is still working on the spreadsheet to figure out all of the best options to buy the new dishwasher because the dishwasher's been broken for a month.
Lauren, are you in the market for a dishwasher?
Yeah.
That sounds awful personal.
That is, no, that's not.
Oh, okay.
So, you know, buying a vehicle can be an ordeal with a questioner, like that can take 6-7 months, a year, whatever. Really have to feel like they know it all and they're making the best choice. So again, this tipping quality are questioners who tend to be a little more motivated by the exterior rules, kind of lean more toward an upholder. And questioners who are more in that devil's advocate space of questioning, why are we doing the thing this way, kind of tip toward down rebel zone. Alright, so we're gonna do this again, it's up to you if you wanna move about the room and find a new group to chit chat with, but same thing, just get into a huddle of 2 or 3 folks in your neighborhood and have some conversation about this. So for a couple of questioners, does this feel like it fits? Who else in your orbit do you maybe know as a questioner? Share some stories or examples of how you've seen this play out. And what are you learning from this exercise? And we'll come back together soon. Thank you.
That was my thing.
Yeah. Those are resting.
I know.
So, that's been, that's been. Yeah, it is. It's just the box on it. Like we got it, and that's how, but it's just.
Well, I think my aggressive, I think a lot of that has tendencies and one of the things that like we struggle with is it's like, okay, we need to make a decision. It's like, why does this decision need to take like a week and a half?
Oh, you're good.
We're so long involved with decisions. It's perfect. Yeah, we just make a decision. How many open decisions do we have to have?
But it's to me, it's a long story.
But I don't know if it's like, it's interesting, I don't know if it was like a need for information or maybe just like there's a processing at a time, and it's like we're like, sit with ideas and work away.
I find it's totally something that the other avenues.
Like you said, sorry, I haven't over discussing, but we because it's a bunch of even though I see some much.
I do have a question.
I'm much longer than. Oh, you go, they there's nuts and this back it's back there. They're unbelievable.
So if you don't mind sharing, like what really, maybe what did. This case kind of weird, say like, you know, box.
The rubber side of it is. She's always resistant to things. But the question is that she literally is most like. Yeah. Oh, trying to question things like you're. For watching that video. What I'm certain is. I guess it never did there. What I buy, listen, I do a question, everybody would sit there, it's already place. I guess the best way to play it. Yeah, exactly. And this was one great question, I realized how important it is. Because people see yeah, like, it's very well, they don't. I think that's fine. But people are snow or stuff that, like everything in the city. Yeah, one thing that I is so I'll let that in. Like I can't don't do it in a space that I. That's all me too. It's not like the same. Well, there's drawers. Well, I do know. But yeah, so it was right. I think. Is it probably not? Letting someone try to. It's not a question.
That's what they like to ask is you are.
I just like people. What the goal is. You know, for. We always get that. Now I'm so unmarked. Get access to not just now it's right there's you don't have
It's kind of, I think that's a really good point about like this, I lost conflict, and like, how you show up in certain roles, or maybe how you potentially evolve in, because I have to, like, I think even when I first started in my career, I started to, it was really hard to tell people, oh, and I like, you guys, it's part of the deal, like, I think we had one, yeah, a couple of them, I think, this wasn't like, keeps us, certainly felt that. Can't want to stay. Bad, I gotta be bearer of bad news for everybody, you know, what's up? What?
You're not seeing.
Yeah, and then eventually just kind of came, and because the role is. Evolved.
Yeah. It is, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, so you want to back up? About. I see.
First of all.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know
Well, I don't think I've had experiences where it's like, you're never done thinking of everything. It's like, when are we gonna stop? When are done talking about it, and down to doing it?
Yeah, often I have. Often I've asked questions and I'm and there's me on my ears. I think that she's really starting over everyone's out. Trying to show. No chipping.
We're gonna get started, and thank you. All right, I've done some minutes. Over on this side, we're in this way. Let's go over our teams, we're gonna start with you, questioner to this president.
Well, I said yes and no, and I think all of these different elements, right, all these different obliger, rebel, they all apply to me in different scenarios, because I shared with my group that, when I'm on council, I'm playing a particular role, and is trying to do the job the best that I can, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's like what I'm trying to do on council is who I am all the time. So in other roles, you know, or other parts of my life, I might not always be a questioner. And when I'm on council, you know, you don't get a chance to really know like the true, like a full spectrum of who somebody is. There's just not enough opportunity for that. And so because of that, I'm trying to figure out what a good job is, like what is somebody who's successful in this role, like doing a good job for the right reasons, and I try to do that. And even some of that is counterintuitive to my natural personality and who I really am. So it is a lot of it me trying to do a good job and playing that role and being the council member.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I mean, humans are complex, no one is 100% any one of these things, and you all might feel like you identify with a different tendency at a different time, depending on the circumstances. So it's interesting that you said you're bringing this questioner talent to the role of city council because you are fulfilling a role.
Yeah. It's just, I don't know, it's just what I'm just trying to do a good job, and that is one of the ways that I see to do it. I know there's probably other ways as well, but this one, I guess, makes sense to me.
This right for you?
Yeah, so I told my small group this story, so Rob and I took this quiz earlier when they were testing it. And I did not resonate with me, but Rob kind of held up the mirror and was like, no, it's 100%. For you.
I don't remember doing that.
But, you know, I think that's what I probably tipped upholder, I guess, because I relate to a lot described in the upholder piece of this. The only other thing that I've shared is I don't know partially how do our roles influence this over time. So if I had taken this test 20 years ago, would I have been an upholder, but because of the role that I'm in, I'm always asking other people what they thought through, I'm trying to anticipate, I'm trying to think about the systems, like, some of this is this learned behavior, over a long period of time, it has started to kind of maybe shift me from where I still relate, but potentially where just practically, I spend more of my time and effort in this space, maybe.
Thank you for sharing that, because when we did, talk about this and thinking for the retreat, we said to Nancy, like, well, it's always the questioners who are kind of skeptical. Yeah, not. We talked about a couple weeks, maybe last week, a couple weeks ago, you all got the presentation on your citizen satisfaction survey, and we heard there was a lot of dialogue about the methodology, like maybe some questioning going on in that scenario. Anything else? What other stories or examples did you talk about in your group that kind of represent the question or mindset? Does anyone live with a questioner? Want to talk about that experience?
One thing, Councilmember Martinez mentioned, mentioned was how questioners sometimes, and this resonated with us, have a goal in mind, or they're going somewhere. You may not know it, but these questions are, filling in blanks for what they feel maybe their position is sometimes, or they're trying to accomplish.
I always think of questioners as professional problem solvers. They're asking questions from a place of purpose, for sure. Any other thoughts about our questioner friends? Some fingers. Oh gosh. I saw your white finger line. Megan and I were talking offline while you were working. Megan's a questioner, and she said something that I thought was very interesting, that that analytical skill kind of becomes her emotional support animal in a moment of conflict. Yeah, share more about that.
Yeah, I really I find conflict really interesting. I think it's because it really scared me a few years ago. I think that's pretty common. And so I was doing a lot of research and went through training about conflict, and we did a quiz kind of like this about that really examined how you react to what are your go-to strategies when you're confronting conflict. And mine really was hunker down, get all the data, question all the things, meet all the people. That can be effective sometimes, but it can also really hold you back from actually moving forward, and it can be kind of debilitating if you use it too much. So just kind of that self-awareness is really helpful to me. But so I definitely am a questioner, but it's the analytical piece, that component of it is more important to me when I'm in conflict. We're dealing with something that I think could become conflictual. Yeah.
Any other thoughts on questioners?
I do a little bit on what she was saying. I'd be curious if that changes based upon who the conflict is with. I live with a questioner who I would say is on the extreme.
Yeah.
He's not bubbling around anywhere else. So I get exhausted. And when you say it's with a purpose, I'm like, I don't know. I'm not sure it is. And so his conflict resolution with the upholder is a map. So I'm curious if the response is different from a questioner.
If I have a close friendship or family relationship, it doesn't do that. It's more like in professional settings or in workplace, volunteering in the community and things like that is really when that comes out. But home life, not as much.
I can see that. Yeah, hold that thought, because you're an upholder, right?
I am.
Okay. We're gonna talk that relates to the lighters too. We're gonna talk about that. Okay, obliger time. Full disclosure, I'm an obliger, so I have a lot of things on my mind about this, and you may all have to shut me off, but obligers easily meet outer expectations and struggle all day long for inner expectations. But they're awesome team members because the obligers just want to please you and make you happy, and they want the team to be great, and they want to see the team succeed. They will do everybody else's work on the team to make sure that the team succeeds in a way that is unhealthy for everybody involved. We often talk about the obligers as type O, You've got like the blood type O because they're great utility players, can kind of slot in to be whatever you need them to be at any moment. Because they really thrive on getting that external affirmation of pleasing others, pleasing the team. Obligers really struggle with their inner expectations, so accountability is crucial for their success. So, obligers are the people who will schedule a meeting over their lunch hour or their workout time. Anytime somebody asks, obligers are doing every last thing that needs to be handled in their household without ever asking anybody for help and being a martyr about it. So really what's important for them is creating that other success. So obligers love a deadline, obligers love a performance metric, they love a goal and a target to hit. And they really want to be acknowledged when they fulfill the target. That's really what drives them and keeps them motivated, knowing that they satisfy the team, satisfy the expectation. In contrast to upholder, like we were talking about, our poor obligers are really susceptible to overwork burnout because they will always kind of give first before looking at their own needs. And they're not as great at setting boundaries as our obligers who kind of have that mindset of capacity and balance. And sometimes obligers are thrive so much on accountability that they create expectations that don't really exist. So, like this is partner Mary one time did this with a group of nurses. And in that conversation, an obliger brought up that every morning on the way in for the shift, she was doing the coffee run and bringing in coffee for the other nurses. And said, it can be stressful if I'm running late or something's going on with the kids and I feel like I still gotta go and get that coffee because people are counting on it and they're expecting it. And in this conversation, of course, everybody else was like, no, we don't want this to be a source of stress for you. Like, it's not. We really appreciate that you're doing that. You don't get it, or we can take turns, or we can skip a coffee runs today. No big deal. So obligers really have to be careful about making sure that whatever they are stressing themselves out over is a real expectation and not something that they put upon themselves over here. When obligers get to this place of overwork and burnout, this phenomenon happens that we call obliger burnout. So obligers will just crush it for a long time, getting after it, getting the work done, and often will have a hard or rough stop when they get to a point of, no more, I cannot do anymore. That is usually not a slow burn, where they are maturely communicating that they need help, that things are getting tough. It's usually like a hard stop. And sometimes in obliger rebellion, when that happens, they are rebelling in a way that is only hurtful to them and not others involved. So for example, an obliger who gets rebellion in the workplace might say, I have it, I'm done with this job, putting in my notice, quits the job, but spends the next 2 weeks working late, putting in extra hours to be sure they are painstakingly documenting all the processes, where everything is, so that they can immediately fill it out when you're not letting the team know. Okay, so those are obligers. Again, this tipping, obligers who tend to be a little more toward the outer expectations, kind of tip up toward uphold. They love those systems, they love processes. And obligers that kind of start to let their inner expectations go, start to get to that burnout zone, and tip toward, okay. All right, gonna let you all, heads nodding as I was talking, which is interesting, I can't wait to grill you all on purpose. So we're getting on to give you a little time to talk in your groups and no one else together.
I will go and I'll just put it on. Be done, and I'll to get everybody up to park before I quit. And you call me afterwards. Then you read it. So I don't. But I found out because we're talking about the run my own business, so I'm like, it's not, like, it's hard. And I'm just doing this.
Well, maybe like, well, that's not what I'm at. The regular comes up to
Yeah, that's the When I sit down, I don't stop, so they're. Like she's like, I got things.
Yeah. You got
But anyway.
Yeah, I think the style is hard because maybe if you're not a student or not seeing, then you're like, oh god, there's a million things that could have happened. Of course, it doesn't happen. Prevent us from getting over, but and now we're here. I'm not gonna say. Sexy innocent. I don't know who you're about.
Yeah.
I'll
say that like within the.
But I think sometimes some of the conversations I've had, like, it's okay, like, it's hard, but it's okay that.
Yeah.
You can't meet everybody's expectations, so you gotta live by what expectations you're gonna meet, or not. Don't make it a decision. So, and there are consequences.
Yeah, I would say I'm an obliger. Kids, make it hard not.
We're here. We're always gonna be right. Yeah, it's been a slide, I told, not just here, but we're off. You know, you just get back there and you don't stop, so everything has to have the external space. It's not always good.
Yeah, you worry about.
Yeah, I would, keeps me from being a obliger when it's not,
I'll say this too.
it's right, you get a soldier, and I will. Well, push back, and it doesn't always go well. I mean, you've been on text threads, I think certain residents, before you were a young, and I would go back and they wouldn't mind that. And it wasn't the right thing to do. Push back.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think it goes back to where we started being with everybody else. It's about the yeah, you're right. Like, well, sometimes try to put, twist you into a position that, hey, like, really need this. Yeah, I do. I don't know how your conversations go. So. It's not
I can't really think that, maybe the old like.
Yeah.
That's what I. Kids are luxury, they. Yeah. So now when they're not doing the right thing. Yeah. Yeah, that math is right. There's so much you can see. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was mad at I made the worst one. They try not to do that to my. It's not fair. She's definitely not enough security. She would be a rebel. If she were to take that, she would be one of those other offices. Very eager to hear what you have been thinking about. Fellow obligers in the room. Can we have show of hands again? Who are the obligers? Obligers in the room, remind me. Okay. They're busy. Okay, great. So fellow obligers, do you want to share? Did this resonate? Tell me more. How? Give me a story or an example. How does this play out for you as an obliger? We'll start with you, Ms.
We were discussing the, I guess, more unhealthy side of it. Because I use the term all the time of supernova. I will go, and when I hit that wall, it's bashing.
Yeah. I feel you. But let's talk about the positive. You're getting all the things done, right?
Yeah, I put myself so far back that I don't allow myself, like I have to use it as a reward, like watching TV.
Yeah.
And so I have to get all this stuff done in order to have some relief. And I've learned that's not a requirement and it's not healthy, because my partner was sharing.
Yeah, baby. You set a reward for yourself in order to allow yourself to do something for you. Bam. You have to have accountability in order to meet those inner expectations. You know, our obligers are like have a hard time getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym like the upholders, but if they have a buddy to create that accountability, that's what I. Other thoughts, other obligers?
Can I start were you in the obliger too? So we.
Does this feel close to home?
Now you're kind of obligated to respond.
Yeah.
Where you shared about quitting jobs, I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done that. I've worked my tail off and I'm just like, I'm out of here. I've given them their notice and then when they call me afterwards, I was like, and I set my boundaries.
Hard wall.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm like, you should have been paying attention.
Got it. For sure.
Next.
Any other obliger points? As an obliger, I like to share something I learned about how obligers interact with questioners. Very often, you only have a couple questioners on your team. Very often we see a more even split between questioners and obligers. Obligers tend to be really drawn to public service. You probably have a lot of obligers on your staff. When obligers interact with questioners, obligers are so motivated by that external excitation, like they want to please. When those questions are coming at them from an obliger, they might internalize that as failure. Like you are questioning me because I have failed to meet the expectation in some way. And those questions become demoralizing to them. So I just mentioned that because we did this for the workshop one time and it was like 5 of the 7 council members were questioners. And I mean, all of their department heads were obligers. And there was this tension of like, we cannot make council happy. And so I kind of mentioned that to just say like, if you are an obliger, quit taking it personally, okay? They just need you to meet the information threshold so they can move forward. And on the flip side, questioners, be sensitive to your tender little obligers. Let me be happy, okay? And feel your questions as you're being disciplined, okay? Any other thoughts? Does anyone live with an obliger? Mention that. Questioner. Oh, questioner. Sorry. Anyone else in your orbit who's an obliger?
So I did say my daughter is, one of my daughters is an obliger. I think I have a family obliger and a rebel, which is, I don't know how that happened. But the idea that if there's not a system that she can plug in, her expectations that are really clear, can be real, like create a lot of anxiety for her, that she doesn't know what success looks like in that circumstance.
If your obliger is asking you for a deadline and you respond with whenever you get to it, they're gonna have a tiny panic attack in their mind, okay? Yeah.
I literally shook my head. No.
Yeah.
That's what I said. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah, like.
If you say whenever you get to it, I will never get to it because somebody else will set a deadline. Okay, any other obliging thoughts? Well, last but definitely not least, we are gonna talk about our levels. Councilmember Byrd, so sorry to put you on the spot, but you are a resident rebel. My business partner Meredith, who some of you met last year, is also a rebel, so. You know, I've been intimate business partnership with somebody in this zone, so I have a lot to say on this topic too. But rebels are awesome because they resist both inner and outer expectations, and I think. We talked a lot about the term rebel. I think the rebel category kind of gets mischaracterized as being like obstructionist or lazy, and that is not it at all. Rebels are awesome team members to have, but they are creative and they want to do it their way. So again, rebels value freedom and authenticity. They are really going to push back and resist if they are boxed into a certain way of doing things or a certain process. But if you give them a challenge of here's a problem to solve, go figure out how to solve it, they will embrace that and get after it all day long. So, you know, in a city government setting, we often say, your rebels are your people that you want to give your process improvement stuff to. Like, if you tell a rebel, this thing isn't really working for us and I don't know why, like, go figure it out, they will thrive on that kind of creative problem solving thing. If you tell them, I need you to do it in exactly a certain way, these 3 steps in this order, you're just gonna feel a little resistant to that all along the way. Rebels can do anything that they want to do. So again, the trick here is to kind of convert an expectation into something that they want. I told you that my business partner is a rebel, so she's like me, had a background in city management. And so people would often say, like, I'm so surprised that you're a rebel because you're in this kind of buttoned up formal position where, you know, there's lots of rules and ordinances that you have to follow. And her response to that was, well, I always wanted to be in public service. I wanted to be successful in city government, and I knew that there were certain rules and a way of operating that I had to follow. So that became the thing that I wanted to do, and I could successfully motivate myself to do it. So again, I just mentioned that rebel doesn't mean obstructionist. It means they've really got to find that inner motivation. Rebels kind of struggle with the routines, with the planning. They want to be creative, and you really have to give them that space. But with my business partner, something I learned with her is that I have to be really crystal clear what I need and want out of her. Like if I say, hey Meredith, I need you to proofread this document. If I'm not careful and say, I just need you to proofread this for like typos and misspelled words, she will totally redesign the document and the process and the framework and the layout and want to have like a 2-hour conversation about how we could do this smarter. Like, I just need you to proofread this. And there might be other times when I say, I need you to bring your full rebel energy and creativity to totally redesign and blow the thing up. So again, with rebels, it's just kind of figuring out how to harness their talent and really direct that skill. Rebels respond best to information plus consequences plus a choice. So again, they can get things done, but you've got to kind of help them see that path forward. Sometimes the example we give is talking about this like the way that you would motivate a toddler, okay? You got to give them the information. The information is, hey kiddo, you got to wear pants because society kind of expects you to wear pants. And there are laws about being out without pants on. So that's the information. You got to wear pants. Consequence. If you don't put pants on, we're not going to be able to go out and meet grandpa and grandma for ice cream later, which I'm making ice cream. Consequence. So choice. You got to wear pants, but you can pick. Do you want to wear the red pants or the blue pants? And that kind of formula can help rebels get where they need to go. Again, we talked about tipping, rebels who kind of lean more toward that inner expectation or kind of focus on their motivations and desires. And again, it's not in a selfish way, it's more like in a mission driven. Questioners, what's the why? Why are we doing this? And rebels who tend to lean more toward the outer expectations, get in that pushback zone. They want to challenge whatever gun process is happening in the city and want to totally blow it up and get creative into a different way. Okay, so this time I'm not gonna ask you to work in your groups, we'll just kind of have a group dialogue. And I'm sorry, council member, but you're representing, so we're gonna put you on the spot, what do you think? Does this resonate with you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Tell me more, give me an example of like how this has played out for you, either on the council or in your day job.
I hate routines, I hate stupid processes. And honestly, it's probably one of the reasons I ended up coming in, like wanting to be in public service in general, is because I see things and I'm like, well, that's a really dumb way of doing things, so I'll fix that. That looks really stupid.
Do you consider yourself a creative person?
Kind of, but I see myself as more of a problem solver.
Others, Tansy, you mentioned you have a loved one who's a rebel.
Yeah, I think one of my daughters just has a really hard time with the idea that other people will impose expectations on her. And I see the husband of Martinez not give the other daughter as well. So like the framing of the story that we told about the toddler, we probably have done that a million times in parenting her of helping to understand like you don't get to shape the world around you to some degree, you do to kind of connect to the world in some way.
That really resonates for me. I have a son, bless his heart, who's a rebel and lives in home with 3 Obligers. And it took us a while to figure out that this child was motivated a little differently than the rest of us. So it was like, his sister's an Obliger, so we said the room's gotta get cleaned and it's just gotta get cleaned by 6 o'clock on Sunday night when you have to go back to mom's house. That child would wait until 5:59, okay, but it would get done. And his sister had it done 30 seconds after we said, go clean your room.
How old is he?
Oh, he's 15 now.
So they turned to take, well, you guys.
Basically. But inner motivations, the things that he loves and that he cares about will get, I mean, he's awesome, right? So he does great, but it's finding that source of motivation. Who else? Any other thoughts? Maybe doesn't have to be family member, other people in your orbit who bring this awesome rebel power.
I'll just say out of my 16-year-old never cleans her room, and I say the same thing over and over, and I still get the same result of it looking terrible. So when you use the example of you can wear the green pants or the red pants, I'm thinking you use this stand-up vacuum or the handheld. Like, how do I get her? Let's pause it for today, tonight.
I have a 7-year-old, and what resonated with me was the when she wants to do something, I mean, it's like full throttle and amazing, and it's really cool. I just can't quite figure out how to make her want to clean her room, because it would be the cleanest room I'd ever seen.
Asking really important roles. And if you think about this, the roles that you play in public service, if you get that rebel in the right job in the right place, they're gonna do some incredible things for you. But if they're in a place that's too rigid, they're gonna resist against it. Any other thoughts on the rebels? So just to wrap us up here, I'm gonna go through just some tips and tricks of how you can use this framework to understand and influence others. So just kind of now you've learned a little bit more about each other. Maybe as you continue to interact with each other, you will Think about how these tendencies play out and maybe see like, oh yeah, that person's a questioner, they're bringing a questioner right now, just kind of help you understand more where people are coming from and their motivation. So the next few slides, we're just gonna talk about kind of how you can be more effective using this. So this slide shows, I mentioned like 3.5 million people have taken this assessment. So globally, this is how these responses shake out. The biggest category is Elijah's. You see kind of how the other categories play out. I mention this though because just generally as a society and as government, we design processes and systems to work for upholders. Okay, we adopt ordinances, we set policies, and we tell people there's a rule, follow it, and we expect that they will. And upholders will, but what we know is that 81% of the population, of the citizens that you serve, of your city staff, are probably gonna be motivated in a little different way. So we have to be creative in the way that we communicate with people, in the way that we challenge and motivate people to really get our best performance. So for upholders, a lot of these things we've talked about, but I'm gonna hit on a few extras. You might be dealing with an identifier if it's somebody who really loves solo activities, somebody who's consistently following through. The best ways to motivate an upholder, know what they value and honor that. If you are invited to a meeting set by an upholder, I recommend that you be there precisely on time. There is not gonna be a 3-minute grace period to jump on the Zoom call, okay? So help them with that. Know the details, be diligent about information, that's what your upholders love, and appeal to their sense of responsibility. Their love language is being rewarded for excellence and productivity. So upholders are pretty independently motivated. They don't need a lot of attaboys. But recognizing like, hey, your work is really adding that excellence and productivity to our team, you can go all the way with them. For questioners are information junkies, okay? If you are interacting with somebody who's reading all the instruction manuals, reading every word of the council packet, if you're running into this person at trivia night, you might be interacting with a questioner. Best way to motivate them, give them a sense of logic and reason, make it all make sense to them, really tap into that sense of why. And don't push them. Like asking a questioner not to ask questions is really kind of offending their core sensibilities. So again, you kind of have to figure out what is that information threshold, what do they really need to move forward and aim toward that. Their love language, they love being rewarded and recognized for the metrics, for the efficiency, for solving the problem in the smartest way. So really help recognize that talent that they are bringing. Then obligers, you might be dealing with an obliger if it's somebody who embraces group work. For somebody for whom accountability is important, really wants to understand the expectations so they can fully meet them. How to motivate obligers, make sure that they are all in, that they fully understand what success looks like for whatever you've asked them to do. Create tangible action steps. Your obligers are probably gonna need a few more check-ins and milestones than certainly our upholders would be maybe more familiar with. But they are gonna thrive on that accountability and that structure. So give them a little carrot to aim for, you know, tell them if they work hard for the next hour, they can take their TV break. Give them weekly milestones, not quarterly milestones, and really acknowledge them along the way. Their love language, obligers thrive so much on those outer expectations that they're gonna need you to acknowledge what they're reading. What's kind of an interesting like human quirk is obligers don't know how to take a compliment, right? They are very focused on you and what you need, and it can be really awkward and uncomfortable for them to get that outer praise. But the truth is they really do need that recognition to feel that inner motivation. And then finally our rebels. Rebels resist rules and control. They don't want to be trapped in a rigid structure. They really need that identity and sense of self-importance. So how to motivate your rebels? Give them choice. Give them a meaty problem to solve and let them figure out how to solve it, and they will probably do great things for you. Acknowledge their rebellious nature and appreciate and accept it and frame it as a positive and not a negative. Their love language, they love being rewarded and recognized for thinking outside of the box, for being flexible and bringing in that creativity. Okay. That is everything that I have to share. I think we got a few more minutes, so I'm just gonna ask, are there any other thoughts? Anything that someone learned today about yourself? Or another tendency that was hopefully you guys can.
I learned not to be married to a rebel.
That's fine. Oh, and you're trying to set accountability, spouse is.
Yeah. If I ask her like, hey, I need these things scanned for taxes or whatever, just get them to me, like, it might take 2 or 3 days, but if I say. Go somewhere for spring break, just figure out whatever trip you wanna do and accommodations, like. She's. Like in a workshop, she's doing it, she's highly motivated and it gets, I don't have to answer any questions or anything, it's just what I also appreciate, it's a task I can delegate. But she doesn't like being delegated chores or responsibility or, the things that I value.
Thank you for sharing that. Anyone else, anything that you learned or a light bulb that kind of clicked for you, like, yeah, that person's
I think for me, it's kind of like code switching in different places in your life and jobs that you have to do, like you kind of take on different roles because I think I've kind of like evolved in different areas. As a labor leader, I was a rebel. It was all about like, how far can you push it? But then as a policy maker, I'm more of an upholder and an obliger, so I want to make sure that I'm leading to the constituency and also upholding rules that are needed. And having folks understand those, and then as an educator, probably more of an upholder. And I mean, all of them really, you kind of do all three on the top, the rebel, you'd love to do that a little bit in some regard, but with education, especially the kids I work with, you have to be more of an upholder and a secure person for them to be around, so. I think it's like, that's the thing, it's like, you could say this is kind of like where I am now, but I see a lot of those qualities in different parts of my life, so.
I think that's awesome. A couple of you mentioned that and the shape shifting among these, and I think that's the power of having this conversation. It's just awareness. So that in a given situation, you might kind of consciously think, I need to bring some rebel energy to this situation. That may not be your dominant tendency where you start from, but awareness might help you kind of pivot as you need to. What else? What time is it?
So it's 2:22 and then we have a break set until about 2:45.
Let's do that. Let's take our break. Everybody maybe step outside, get some fresh air, and we'll come back together 2:45.
Nobody.
Well, we keep with our time. I'm gonna get us started again. I know we got some post-garden snacks, which is great. What we're gonna do next is we're coming back together. Everybody had a break and we had a chance to just decompress for a minute. And let's just spend a minute talking a little bit more about these tendencies and how they might play out in the work that you do on city council. So we were going through that, having our conversation. We talked about one of the things. We talked about our family and our personal lives a little bit. And some of you talk about things that are relevant to your work in city government. But we're gonna spend just a little bit of time kind of focusing on that. So think about how your tendency might show up in the work that you do for the city of Thornton. And as we go for the rest of the exercises, I want you to think about how your tendency might overlap with your values and the roles that you play as a city council member. So I'm giving those to you for prompts, but does anybody want to start and share a little bit about how you see your tendency kind of play out in the work that you do on the city council? A couple of you mentioned like you kind of play to the tendency that you need to for the issue of the moment. Any other thoughts? Yeah. Councilmember Russell.
So, being an obliger, you just how those standards. Very kind of thought process of people are contributing dollars, hard money. And so there is like this huge concern of not winning, because maybe that's the volunteer thing, so if this is this, because I had to give those results to everybody that asked me and contributed anything. So that's
Thank you. This notion that people have literally invested money in you and your success. And the expectation that creates for the work that you're doing. Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Does anybody else relate to that? Kind of, that's interesting, kind of your transition from a candidate to council member. Any thoughts around that? We talked about that a little bit this morning, Councilmember Alex. Here, you want to share? What? Well, we're talking about it's hard, right? You go through this whole campaign and you get elected, and then like a week later, you're on the dais and you're expected to govern, and there isn't really a lot of transition from candidate to.
Yeah, like, I think that, we were talking about it, I was thinking more of like the mental health aspects of becoming a public servant and like what it looks like to be on the campaign trail. And having a conversation with folks and having to actually be in the decision making seat. And how you kind of have to balance the two, and sometimes I can really screw with your head. Just as an individual in that seat, because there may have been people that didn't agree with you on the campaign trail, and then all of a sudden they are agreeing with you, and you're like really kind of have a hard time deciphering what's like truly what people want or what you should do. But I think ultimately it comes down to like when I was looking at these things and then looking like the blinder role, I was thinking like, you can definitely play into that, but you can't make everybody happy. And I think Tansy and I had a conversation at one point about, I was talking about a leader who would tell a union leader I knew many decades ago that would tell everybody yes, that they could do that. Yeah, that can happen. And so the yeses were kind of contradictory, because there's when this person yes and this person yes, they both have oppositional views. So then when you go to the table and actually have to make a decision, it's gonna make somebody upset. And so ultimately, like, being a good leader means that sometimes you have to tell people no, or you have to be more like honest in what your approach is gonna be as a decision maker. So yeah.
That's hard. Yeah, please.
Yeah, and also I'm dealing with that experience with my LS, 2.5 years ago when she ran, she won her second. And she was not successful in her first one, but then it set the stage for her second run, because she applied the lessons learned from the first campaign to the second, and she's become a very effective leader, and then she won, and there we are. But then I've been struggling with that too. It's like, I've been involved in politics almost 20 years, 2 states, and helping many candidates, seek and then win office, right? And then doing it myself. I mean, it's still different. I'll say a good thing, when I was a candidate, people will talk to me. If I'm just a volunteer, it's like, whatever. Out of respect, I was just saying, it's it's changes when you're the candidate, you're the ones on the ballot. They're more receptive to have conversation. That was really the positive thing I think on my campaign was, the conversations, thousands of outdoors, it's like, because that's what people want, they want to listen. So it was really great. But then get elected, and then now we're getting all the orientation, all the things, and then I would say rally, but then it's been hard for me than expected to transition. I'm doing better now, but I think being the advisor, I was overthinking a lot of things, and that really played a role. I had my my godmother passed away, November, she was in bed for a while, she knew I won my race, and then I think she kind of. So, dealing with the orientation, dealing with loss, which I was still reviewing paid counseling for that, and going to seek more counseling. But it's been a struggle, but luckily my friends and, I've leaned on, not to mention city staff, have been absolutely phenomenal. I mean, there's things that need to be done, obviously, the orientation basically has to be done for Devin, Drew, Cherish, and I, the effective leaders on council, we have to have this knowledge, and it has to come at you, so it's the fire hose, and that's what local say, but still, they've been great with, we got the fire spot, this is what we're gonna do for you to help you, so we can get you through the fire hose. And they're still doing that, so I'm very grateful. To Tansy, Tammy, Brett, and Rob, thank you. But still, like I said, each day is a different day. I will now say, I really focus on my constituent work, because constituents come. I may not respond that second, but I'm thinking about it, I'm responding fairly quickly to what issues there are. And there's a way that that council knows about. We have call council action requests, we do that they know, hey, I'm out here trying to address neighbors' concerns. So I'm taking great joy, and that's helping me in the process too, trying to help neighbors out have concern, because I said I would do that when I came to gate, and that's something I will do as an outcome. To do what I promised folks I would do.
Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing your personal story. This is really great. I mean, several of you shared kind of the heavy weight of this work, and it's hard, and there are lots of big expectations on you. So I actually think that's really an awesome segue into what we're going to do next, which is spend some time talking about and reflecting on how we govern together. You were all unique personalities with unique motivations that brought you to this role as city council member, and now you're expected to function together as a team to do your best work on behalf of the city. And so what we want to do today is just continue to kind of give you some language and some framework to help you understand yourselves and each other better, that might help you navigate some of that kind of psychological turmoil that's going on with balancing all the different interests and expectations, so that you can really do your best work on behalf of the community and not lose your mind in the process. So last year when we got together, we spent quite a bit of time talking about values and the values that motivate each of you in public service. So this year, since we've got some new folks at the table, we wanted to spend a little time introducing to you a framework that comes from Dr. John Nalbandian. He's a really respected and well-known professor and thought leader in public administration. And he kind of created this framework of good politics is about values. It's not about the right answers. The kind of issues that you all are asked to confront and serving your community are often very complex and challenging, and there's often more than one solution or way to address a given problem. It's not always black and white. There's shades of gray of how you can approach your work. And so this philosophy is kind of about using our values to do the work instead of really just kind of trying to rigidly define what is the right answer. Sometimes there's not a right answer. There's just best fit answers. So we're going to talk about the intersection of these values. You might think about values a little differently, but these are kind of the categories that he developed in this research as being like the values that influence public service. So this first idea is accountability and representation, and this is about responding to the will of the people. Really coming from a perspective of the governing process is being representative of the people is essential for our legitimacy as a government entity. And this can really, you can look at this from two different perspectives. You can think about accountability and representation from a trustee perspective. Like the community has elected me with my talents and my gifts to do the best job that I can to serve their interests. Or you can think of it more from a representative perspective, that it is my job to do the best that I can to discern the will of the people and then act according to that will, even if it may not be what I personally would choose to do in any given situation. But that's this idea of accountability and representation. Next is efficiency and professionalism. So this kind of comes at a value of focuses on the how. we talked about questionnaires earlier, so this value really thinks about analysis and process, looking at data, being good stewards of public resources. Often this is where your staff likes to live. Your staff are trained as professionals to solve problems according to some professional framework that guides them. So it's really driven by your laws and your policies. So that's kind of what this value is about. How can we most efficiently and with professionalism serve the interests of our community? This third category is a value of social equity and diversity. So people who approach issues from this value system are really respecting the differences within the community. So this value is focused on trying to find solutions that work for everyone in the entire community, not necessarily just the majority. And it's really focused on this idea of access and representation across all the diversity in your community. And then finally, this fourth category is justice and equal rights. So this really speaks to property and individual rights, kind of the lawmaking function of government. So when you are adopting ordinances and setting laws, you're really doing that from a place of assigning rights to different entities and individuals. So it's really that notion of, justice, who has the right, to a different perspective, depending on what the situation is. So again, you can think about the work that you do on city council as kind of playing with these values to get things done. On any given issue, you might feel like one of these values resonates to you more than the others. But it's like we talked about the tendencies. Several of you said, I can kind of relate to all of these tendencies. And the same is true of the values, depending on what the issue is. You might feel more driven or compelled by one set of values than another. And these values can clash and come into conflict. So let me give you an example. You might have a neighborhood that's asking for a four-way stop at an intersection in their area. And if you're looking at that from an efficiency and professionalism perspective, you might be saying the MUTCD traffic manual doesn't justify having a four-way stop in this area. That doesn't make sense. If you're coming at that from an accountability and representation perspective, you're thinking, it may not meet the criteria, but it's what the people want, and they've asked us for it, and we need to represent that will. If you're thinking about it from justice and individual rights, you might be thinking about what are the easements? Are we going to have to take property from somebody to make that intersection work the way the neighbors want us to? None of those perspectives are right or wrong, right? They're just a different way of framing the issue and approaching the work. And that is really the heart of what you do, kind of struggling with those different perspectives and kind of playing with that tension to get to the best possible answers. So I'm going to pause there. Any questions about that?
Your question, please, why is the P lowercase in that first?
Yeah, it's kind of the idea of like lowercase politics. This isn't really about winning the election. It's more about how you're governing.
Okay.
The analytical side, when you said there's sometimes no right answer, cringe, and I'm still trying to pull my hair out. There is no answer.
Okay. Thanks for pushing back a little bit. Say more about that.
I feel like there's always. I'm a person who I see black and white, and I see there's ones and zeros. So you're this or that. There's a yes or a no. Finding middle ground is a very difficult process. So it's there's not an answer, or that's not.
So how do you personally deal with this dynamic that Councilmember Algie was kind of describing of like, there's a lot of information coming to you from a lot of different angles that you have to balance in making your decisions. Like, how do you get to that place of this is the clear right choice?
I tend to absorb the data, weigh the options, and kind of see which one comes out with the best on efficiency.
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No,
You could be thinking about this, but is there one of these value systems that feels most dominant to you?
Probably efficiency and professionalism. But when I see when I see questions or things that's going to it, I want to see what's the most efficient method to get there? What's the most cost effective? And what's the quickest method to get to an answer that's gonna be the correct answer to go?
Yeah, please.
I think. Like, these are always things that are kind of like going through my mind when I think about a problem or something that comes across like. Our desks, right, like, it's easy to say, I think, like, I have sometimes. Residents who are like really into the efficiency and professionalism, and they're like really geeking out on all the details and how 20 other cities have done things and all these other things, and then, you know, they're convinced that like this is the correct answer. But then it comes down again to like accountability and representation, so like. I have to not only think about that one resident or 5 residents, or whoever that might be, but a handful. But I also have to consider that there's accountability and representation for the whole city. And there's a lot of voices I don't hear from, because I heard from a resident this week that she's just like, I just don't get enough chance to engage because I have kids and I have a job and all these other things that go on. So once in a while I might hear from her. And then there's folks with like, you know, wanting their individual rights protected, but then there's the social equity and diversity lens. And you have to kind of like be able to really think about where these values really lie in the values of people in the city of Thornton, because. You know, different cities will have more of these circles getting bigger or smaller depending on what that specific constituency and what the values of that city upholds. And you know,
That can differ issue to issue.
it can, and if I were just to go off my gut, like, when it comes to like people of Thornton, for me, it feels like. They, you know, these first 3 here are kind of even, the socially equity and diversity is getting. Social equity and diversity is getting a little bit bigger, but, you know, you gotta kind of be able to think about like. You have sometimes louder voices telling you this or that. But there are also a lot of people we represent that we don't get to hear from all the time. And I think Councilmember Morris and I was talking like at a meeting, like, you know, I was like, you got a lot of emails yet? He's like, not really. And so we don't hear a lot from folks, and it's just that, you know, when you think about it, it's core, the value of Thornton is, it's a lot of working class people that just don't always have a lot of time to address things that they want done or they have on their mind, and then there are people that have more time because they're retired and they have an expendable income, and they have more time to voice their opinion, but still, if you look at accountability and representation, you wanna be able to you know, balance it out, so. For me, it's always kind of like an ebb and flow with all 3 of these.
I agree.
Yeah.
You see the loudest voices and always the one that you're supposed to listen to the most.
Interesting, yeah. Let me introduce one other concept, and we're gonna continue this discussion. So Dr. Nalbandian and Julie Novak kind of expanded on this idea of values and built out this framework of the different hats that elected officials have to wear. So, you know, you all have day jobs and lives outside of city government, and yet if we wrote a job description for your job as city council member, it would probably be 6 or 7 pages long, because there are so many things that you are expected to do in your roles. So I want to go through these briefly and just have you think about these different hats that you wear in your part-time job as city council member. Big picture different. You have to think beyond just the issue of the moment that you're being asked to vote on, and really consider what are the bigger, broader implications, how does this affect other departments or other neighborhoods? And really think about the community as a whole, even for those of you who are ward members, I'm sure you are thinking, how does this affect my ward, how does this affect the community? A trustee, trustees kind of have that mindset of thinking, how does today's decision affect a generation from now or 2 generations from now, and really thinking about, I'm here for a 4-year term or maybe a couple of 4-year terms, but how do the decisions that I make today impact the community in the long term? And there might be decisions that I'm making that aren't popular today, but I'm making them because I'm thinking a generation or 2 ahead. Customer service agent, a couple of you talked about constituent services, really being mindful of those individual people who are calling you with specific needs, trying to be responsive to them. A community builder is that perspective of really being in touch with your broader civic community. Of community builders are generally the ones who are on the chamber board, going to the Rotary Club meetings, involved. And trying to be connected with that broader civic community as a way to inform you in the way that you're making decisions. Decision maker really speaks to kind of the grind of the work. Every week, every couple weeks, you're coming to a council meeting, you're reading a packet, you're being asked to vote on 50+ items, and really the work that you do to do your analysis and your understanding to be able to make those individual decisions. And then finally, oversight, and that's kind of the role that you play with having the handful of employees that you directly oversee and making sure that there is clear direction and accountability for the broader work that's going on within City Government. So I know we rattled through that very quickly. For the next exercise that we're going to do, I want to have each of you think about which one of those feels like home base. We've talked a lot. At any given time, you're probably pivoting among all of these roles the same way you are with tendencies. But there's probably one or maybe two that feel most dominant to you. So I'm gonna ask you to reflect on that for just a second, and then we'll go around the room and I want to have you share with your colleagues. Which one of these hats feels most like you? Whenever you're ready, somebody just volunteer.
They fluctuate between two immediately, big picture thinker and community builder. And that's those type thing. I think those two are they're more like kind of have to go out of your way to do that. Because it's very easy to just be like, right, your vote, do the thing, and then move on to the next. So, and it seems like more of a fun, creative place to be in this work.
So thank you, big picture thinker, community builder, who else?
Split between the customer service agent, obviously, and trustee.
That's interesting. That's to be thinking about how do I solve the person in front of me's problem and to be thinking future oriented. That's interesting that you kind of identify with both.
Yeah, I think just because my day job, professional wise, like I do real estate, and so you know, flipping houses. So I'm always kind of looking ahead because that's just how the problems come in that industry. And I think that's just where I also get the most engagement is the expectation. So being responsive, but then also being held accountable to the future and the long-term thought process. So it's maybe it's a combination, or maybe I'm thinking of it just from the personal professional as well as the council professional and why it goes that way.
Councilmember Martinez, which feels most at home to you?
Big picture thinker and that's the oversight. But you know, one of the areas that I'm a knack like I've got a strengths finder.
Yeah.
And one of the strengths was strategic thinking, and that's definitely you know, aligns with big picture thinker for me. And that does kind of go in hand with oversight though. So.
What's more saucy?
Customer service agent and decision maker.
That's the one.
Community builder and customer service. Big picture thinker, like we'll just or
And I'm kind of going through these rapid fire because we're going to talk about what we do next. Okay.
I think more of a trustee. Big picture thinker first, trustee.
So, who do this? That's my word. Good.
I think more oversight.
And Mayor, I know you joined us just to go into that. But we're talking about these are all the different roles that council members are kind of expected to fulfill. And I asked everyone, which one feels most dominant to you?
Big picture and trustee.
13 years.
Well, thank you for sharing those. Kind of have those in the back of your brain. Be thinking about all of these roles. I'm gonna hand it over to Megan and she's gonna introduce an exercise, but we're gonna have you kind of expand on this topic.
All right. So we're gonna move on to like more interactive exercise. I'm gonna walk you through it, so try not to skip ahead. We're gonna be passing out a worksheet that just kind of helps you follow along. You don't have to turn it in, there's no right or wrong, again, sorry. Okay, so thank you so much for sharing your insights with me within the one-on-one council interviews as we got ready for today's retreat. I would say you might be curious about what did other people say. I would say the two big takeaway themes that kind of were shared amongst all were first, a passion for the community, a hope for what's next. A shared belief that there's some promise and that council can come together and make good progress together. The second takeaway was shared, I guess I would say the word concern, or just like some of the dynamics and where maybe the relationships aren't quite exactly where we want to be. And so that's why we're here, right? People want to get to know one another on a personal level. They want to know the big ideas or the visions that their colleagues have. So we hope that this exercise and more can help bring that out and kind of be help address those concerns that we all share. Okay. So we modeled this exercise based on something called appreciative inquiry, and that's based on its positive psychology. With this understanding that if we focus on like what's working and the strengths that we have, we can build on that. There's always something positive, even in a really difficult situation or a difficult environment, that we can build on. So I'm going to be walking you through those steps. Appreciative inquiry has these distinct steps, and it's an exercise we're going to do together. I learned about this when I worked for a state agency that does child welfare as part of its portfolio. And so when you're dealing with, I wasn't on the program side, but I learned that when you're working with families and with children dealing with really challenging issues, if you can start on what is working, you know, a situation might feel impossible, but there's always some positive or some strength, and you can build from that. So that's kind of what we're going to do today. The takeaway today from this exercise is we want to walk away with some concrete ideas about how you all can work more effectively together. Okay, we're going to get there together. Any questions before we move forward? Okay, so these might look like improvements in policy and procedure, how you all interact, just different ideas. I don't want to constrain you, okay? But your worksheet kind of spells these steps out. So I'm gonna advance the slide. Do you want to pull this slide up? Oh, go the wrong direction, sorry. I want to pull this slide up from staff here. This just gives an overview of some of the supporting policies, procedures, documents, norms that you all use to support the difficult work that you do together. Okay? I'm not saying we need to change these or do anything about them. That could be a possible outcome, is thinking about, hey, these exist as supports. How are they working, or how are they not working? Is there an additional thing we need to think about? We thought this would just be a good reference point. I know it's a lot of information, and some of you are new and still digesting all this information. I think our staff members here would be happy to kind of dive in and explain more if we need to pause. And during this exercise, we'll be encouraged to kind of participate in the small group exercises as you kind of think about what is this and what are the strengths, how do we build on that, okay? Okay, so any questions? All right, so you have the worksheet in front of you. I'm going to start with just personal reflection, and each of these sections will take about 8 to 10 minutes. Might not need that much for the first one. It's just think to yourself. And right in that section, or just think internally about yourself and what you feel good about as a council member. So a couple prompts you might think about are, I've done good work as a council member when? Could be anything. When do you feel good about the work as a council member? And then kind of zooming out a little bit, the council has done good work together. So when things are going well, what does that look like?
Just take a few minutes to think to yourself, jot down some ideas.
Then a couple more minutes for individual reflection. We come back together.
All right, looks like most are maybe at a stopping point or a pause. So again, this is about recognizing the good, right? It's that building the foundation we can kind of build from and grow on, okay? So again, I've done good work as a council member when, or we've done good work as council together when. Okay? So, I also, I'm gonna ask for a couple of people to share what they wrote down or thought about, but before we move on, to help you kind of connect the dots, we have at the top of your worksheet the hats. So when you're hearing from others, reflecting on yourself, think about how that hat's showing up when you're describing the work you do well, and then also when we're talking about, next step, how we can improve. Okay? Hey, so can I get a couple people to share like what their reflection is? What are some strengths? What's going well? I know it's out there because I heard it on the one-on-one calls.
I'll go first.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, so a couple things. Some of these were just how I hope it'll look like it's right, because I've been here 2 months.
Sure.
Let's see. I've done good work as a councilman when I proactively communicated with residents. When I'm willing to listen and consider an alternative perspective. And brought new ideas, challenge status quo, and help create an environment where others can think better about the future.
Okay.
Let's see, and then as far as council, these are more idealistic, I guess. Our council done good work when the perception and reputation as a group is high. We bring more diversity of thought as right to collaborate from, and not as a competition.
Yeah.
And then also, when the quiet majority feels represented, conserved, and not loud faction.
Thank you for those thoughtful responses that you mentioned. They're idealistic. Keep some of those in mind for kind of as we think about the future too, because moving forward. Okay, how about a couple others? Yeah.
I'll start with the second one where council has done good work. I don't know how to answer that because good work is subjective, especially at the council level. So what it seemed like good work to me is bad work to other people in this council. Wrong direction. When I see it as the right direction. So I don't really know how to identify what it means when we're doing good work when it comes to decision making at that council level. But I think it's easier to answer with individual things because you get feedback from different sources. So like, for example, I feel like I've done good work as a council member when I listen to the people in my community and finding that real ask or what they're actually asking for can actually be harder than it sounds. So listening is important, but also identifying what it is that they are really want, because it's not always words that are coming out of their mouth. And then when I stick to my values, and this can sometimes mean going against the loudest of voices. So it kind of conflicts with the first one. And then I also say that when I keep looking for pathways forward when obstacles reveal themselves. And also empowering others, especially empowering others inside of it.
Thank you. So listening, using your values to move forward and empowering others. Okay, thank you. Okay, how about one or two more?
Yeah, I got pretty specific, actually.
Okay.
I think about it, like, the council's done a great job when we've made progress on challenging long-term projects. And they can feel like they take forever. It's like our shopping center, we've made incremental progress over the last few years as a group. Because when we try to do it individually, nothing happens. And same with the Aylor open space and the outdoor libraries, we're coming together with a long-term vision, but then looking at the incremental wins that we get when we do it.
Yeah.
And then I love the individual piece of that when we get to talk about those wins. So like I presented at the municipal league a couple of years ago about our projects with economic development and the partnerships that we have with other cities to make these projects work. There's something unique and different other cities haven't done, but I get to share that piece with my colleagues across the area.
Yeah, it's really exciting when you can kind of zoom out and go outside and be like, oh, wow, I am really proud about the things that council has done together. Yeah. So what you said about kind of the long-term goal, the big project, but then the incremental wins together as council, I think we'll think about that too tomorrow when we're talking about strategic plan implementation, these big ideas and the projects leading us to the big outcome. Okay, one more, anyone up? For one more, yeah.
I wrote the two and then afterwards, oddly, I think the hats bit two answers, two different hats. Individually, done good with council when I make myself available. I've gotten that appreciation from residents, because a lot of times they've said, we didn't expect you to answer the phone or on the weekends, etc. So there's some validation of just sometimes just be available, and that's a very easy thing to do. And then following that up with being helpful to the situation at hand, when I was able to actually address those issues or bring something to fruition that they envisioned. And those are rewarding, because then it feels like, all right, we're doing the work and we're seeing the results. Council as a whole, I think we've done good with working as a team and carrying the load. We all see those CAR or council action request emails that Councilmember Allergy spoke about earlier, but you don't have to answer every one. And I know that I can rely on the others, like, all right, I'm really slammed right now, and sure enough, somebody else has passed the information on. I know it happens with the mayor a lot, so we're both, she's the mayor, but we're both in the same ward, so we get pinged out the same emails. And so I know that, and so now Drew's part of it too, but I know that it's getting addressed, and I trust the others.
I even started with, in case you haven't seen this already.
Right, yes. So just the reliability of the team. And then when we need to seek resolutions on a long-term issue, the input from everybody. I always tell people we're like the Avengers, and so we have very different day jobs. But that also brings a lot of value. Like specific example was Devin, he's in IT, and the other night we were getting a conversation around, I can't forget what the exact question was, or we're taking, oh, go Brad, yeah. And he had some, I know Justin's in IT too, but you know, having those different skill sets allows us to attack the diversity of the issues of what we see.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't know the right questions to ask, and he has very specific. And I recall Drew and I both being like, "Oh yeah, that's a good question. That guy's good to have on the screen."
Well, because he's got a different hat, he's got those values and different tendency than you might have, right?
Yeah, his professional experience is different from mine.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any one profession that can answer the vast array of issues that we see. And yeah, those skill sets really play into being a team effort. So
Yeah, thank you for that. So I heard the gratification just of being helpful to constituents, you know, and then also just how it feels good to know that together as a council, you can rely on one another to follow up on constituents, and to know that someone else's strengths or their hat or their professional background and tendency will bring new questions and good questions that you might not have thought of, and to kind of know what that looks like across council members. So thank you. Okay, so we're ready to move on to the next stage. Okay, this next stage is called Dream. So this is where you can be creative, and I want to ask that we kind of have groups of 2 or 3 talk with, you know, the small group that you're sitting near. And we're really starting to dream about like what's possible. We're identifying opportunities. It could feel a little nebulous. I know a lot of you might feel the urge to go to like strategies and the nuts and bolts. We're not there yet. We're thinking a little bit bigger picture. What could be? Okay, so hearing all these positive things and the strengths. What could be? This, we're trying to kind of focus on the positive, but it's also okay to identify the gaps, right? There are gaps, there are concerns. How might we start addressing those? Okay, so we're brainstorming, we're dreaming about what could be. Okay, so groups of maybe 2 or 3, probably 3. Okay, feel free to move around if you want, or just people near you, and we'll time you about 8 minutes. Okay, all right.
She wants.
What's
And they did the digital, but the trees, please down there. We're not just talking about it before. Being in a program is always individually. Trust is higher. Okay. The one that's the way you're supposed to be swinging.
Yeah.
I think there's two sides of the coin. Now like here, that was stand. But there is this situation with this judgment, exceptions and for and it's not what I want to she should not go against
And the second also got better, like this, then the third. So it's over 2 years old, people, right, so some of them are. Yeah, it's not fun. Why are we doing it?
It's fun. What do you mean? I do that with the bird, just because. It makes it shy, but you did that job, but. There's more. One. Yeah.
It's a good question. It's not specific, okay?
No,
I know, no, like I said, like I said, whatever. So whatever it says, I really like the space of sort of focus, not just have, it's good more. What conveying has to be staff, maybe more financial, something that's fine. To come with value. Like a and that was finished, this might be right. Yes. Balance, it's just, is there a? Here and here, which is really honest, it's a church out plan first, right? So like, it's in here, this is the like, especially like, just so it's right, it's all about the different perspectives. And actually, 6 to 8. There's no reason why we have a smaller concepts of later exam. You're gonna get big. Is that for red out, like, not personal good leadership skills, what? And that's the next one. But it's not. That's my. Lots of saying, where they can empower them aside to like, but it's just like. Really like challenge. The city staff, they're especially getting into their members of
So we never, that's a valid.
Hurry, leave.
You're eating.
Snack, snack.
Personal. And that council is. And I just think about. I don't know.
And I did.
That's the first solution. Yeah, I observe she, yeah.
So I think that's so fun.
So now we have to respond back.
It's like me, I was one so happy to some people.
Well, that because. I know we can.
Come back.
Have to bring it back.
All right,
Lead us. I'm not saying that.
Yeah. Okay, we're gonna come back. Let's start wrapping up. I love hearing the discussions going on. Okay. So you can continue your conversations in the same group. We're gonna stay there, but we're moving on to actionable items design. Okay, so thinking about what's working well, that first part, and then dreaming what could be. Now we want to be like, okay, so how? Okay, so we're coming up with new approaches. Things that we could help fill in those gaps that might exist. New programs or policies, okay, concrete ideas. Okay, so we're gonna, hopefully you'll be able to come up with an idea or a list of things to consider, okay? Same groups, same amount of time, and then we'll come back and have a group discussion and report out, okay? So. Go for it. Oh, absolutely. Almost.
I used to.
Yeah, we talk about like, we don't do stuff over our next.
There isn't.
Yeah, I mean, that's like.
And
You're yeah, I'm a better person when Friday.
Yes, they're working together.
So here's the line that you guys are not, I think it's. No, I don't really think it's. So some one of you all, for those who know that I guess. What do you? It's not like during the day, you can't see it. They put up some film, like during the day, you can't see it, but like now at night, like I can get scan and I can. You're.
Like that the other night.
Yeah, I'm pretty rude, I don't know how you. Somebody, I can't remember who, right? I think they put it up.
It was not a problem.
Somebody, it's like, I don't really like this, like, it's like this comfort for me, and like, knowing that you're just sitting there doing the thing. And I can't see through there, and I can take where you're at.
Strategy.
Self-validated.
Let the and then explain to them why.
Yeah, she would talk.
Like a middle.
The youngest are gonna have something that they don't work,
I just briefly, it was like, I needed to have it.
Well, they need a. Yeah, it's not so bad.
Okay, we're gonna come back together in a minute, wrap it up, please.
yeah, such a nice to meet.
I know. But that's why I didn't.
Their office, and I was like, yeah.
Always be in the room.
I would.
That's it.
That effort.
So.
Okay, it's gonna bring it back to.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, get it in the words, you know, I can see helpful, but even that.
Thanks for wrapping it up, we're gonna bring it back so we can keep moving forward. You know, and then, yeah. Yes, I was telling Rob I might kind of pull out like my kids' teachers do like the clapping and then you have to repeat the same clap, you know. Really, I'm just kidding, yeah. All right, so again. We're thinking about, okay, how do we move from the dream to the reality, okay? So these are actionable strategies. Okay, so I want to hear from every group about some ideas they came up with. And we're really moving into the destiny phase, the implementation, thinking about, okay, how do we actually move forward together, improve collaboration, make those necessary enhancements that we need. So Lauren will be kind of listening for some common themes, and then we'll be including this in a final report with some ideas around, okay, how could these things work? Ideas around feasibility for implementation and things like that, okay? So it sounds like there was some really good conversation, great ideas. I'd love to hear from a group who wants to volunteer to go first and just share some ideas that they had.
So I had, we had talked a little bit about the hats we wear, as council members. And so there were, like a big overarching theme for me in the conversation is, like, John comes from more of a place from like customer service agent. And I have more from a place of first hat I will wear as a big thinker. And so and kind of talking about it, I kind of come more to an approach of like, there's a lot of things that are maybe sometimes not going well, but there's a lot of things that we don't celebrate in the community, and I think that we, you know, take a lot of time to focus on what's wrong and how we can fix it, but like, part of that also is figuring out what's going well and how we can reward that or like celebrate it. And then also education, because I brought that up in the beginning of this whole thing, is like something that's been on my mind because I was talking to Tansy quite a few times about the planning academy and getting folks to understand urban planning, right? And folks, a lot of folks in our community are way years behind, and if you were to think about like how cities were planned when Thornton was first brought into the world and where we are now as far as like what's more sustainable. And I think as a whole, we understand that, but getting our community there has really been difficult. So like really having opportunities for education. And then the other thing is planning more incentives and rewards and positive reinforcement to celebrate some of our older neighborhoods. Because a lot of times what the misconception often from residents is that we're not spending any money in south of the town. But really, we're spending a lot because there's been upkeep we've had to bring back up to good quality, and then also other things. So there's been a lot of expense in our south part of town, but I think really one thing that happens is people feel maybe poorly about their neighborhood for one reason or another. Myself living in Woodland, older 70s neighborhood, and I think I've heard people talk poorly about it. But it's a neighborhood that doesn't have an HOA. And it's a neighborhood that may have challenges that other more urban neighborhoods have, but there's also a lot of really cool stuff there. Yeah, like if you walk the neighborhood and you see the parks, and you see some of the different houses, you live in a unique neighborhood that can celebrate it too. So coming up with positive ways to celebrate our older neighborhoods like original Thornton, you know, many of the older neighborhoods in the south part of town, how do we celebrate them while we continue to work on upgrading the areas that need to be upgraded, and yeah, that way people feel like kind of like what the investment is that's been going on. And how to like also just shifting from like being more because we are going to be a bigger city, this has been on my mind a lot, so how do we shift from being a kind of a customer service oriented role and more into the big picture thinking role. And also like allowing our city staff to be empowered to take care of some of those customer service roles or
To kind of free up the time,
concerns.
for council to be able to focus more on the big picture.
Big picture and policy making, so that way it's a little bit more conducive to like bigger picture strategy and. You know, us having the opportunity to work with our constituents and bring those ideas to the table, so we're gonna have some of the ideas.
Thank you for that list, we captured that, thank you. Wonderful, yeah. And what I hear is like a lot of kind of emphasis around. There's already really good stuff going on, but as council, how can we help celebrate that? That can be positive momentum good to the community.
Yeah, like another one, I think, just listening to some other, like bigger politicians is like community building. Like we have such good community programs as far as like our festivals and things like that, and just celebrating those with the partnership. Yep. Making sure that we continue to keep those because they're just so important to our culture.
Yeah, and that goes hand in hand with those educational programs. Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. What's next?
Talk about ours.
I know.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah.
Sure.
Exactly.
What ideas did y'all have?
So I thought was if we can make things less personal, then we can get more accomplished. It allows us to open space of arguing and challenging without it becoming personal, and so it frees the conversation. And actually, one of the ideas that Timmy had was we try to eat dinner in the training room before the meeting. What if we ate dinner in the conference room beforehand, so it's a more private, intimate setting? It's not quite as public facing, and then move into the face room for the actual meeting. It might open us up a little bit more. I know it's technically public because we're still all there. And any one day, but it might feel a little bit different. And I know not everybody can get there right at 5:30 to eat dinner, but maybe there's an opportunity also to have dinner at 5:45 and then our session starts at 6.
So to be able to break bread together and build kind of
We used to do that.
awareness.
For 13 years within a council, we did that at the beginning, and then as feelings get hurt, people wouldn't come in, jobs get busy, they wouldn't come in. And it just kind of fell apart, and so maybe there's a way to bring it back.
Bring that back. Okay. So then how does that then play into the first thing you talked about, which was like making things less personal?
If we get to know each other a little better, we become human beings to each other, and so it's a lot harder to challenge somebody personally. Or take it personally when you're challenged, if you're friendly with each other to begin with.
There's that trust is built.
Right.
It's a safer way to have those conflicts, those disagreements. No, hey, this is about the issue. This isn't about me as a person or you as
Right.
a person individually. Yeah.
And even 15 minutes of dinner might be enough to start that ball rolling. You don't think so, Cherish? Nope.
Well, thank you for sharing that idea. Okay. So who's next? Would y'all like to share or? Sure. Okay.
So when it came to the idea of what strategies, who approaches it, we didn't really come with specific strategies, but more of a theme of
Okay.
strategies that
Yep.
be very oriented towards our residents. That's something that I think Cherish and I can really relate to, because any strategies that we take, I think having residents included in whatever kind of decision-making process or information collection process is very important to our residents. We have a large group of people in our community who are engaged and active, and they are the loud voices. They don't necessarily speak for the whole community, but they are an important group of people because we appreciate their engagement. Their engagement actually has made positive change and will continue to do so. So, and we also like the approach strategy that I thought of is trying to grow that. You know, the more people that come into the engaged set of people, if that set becomes larger, then it does become more representative of a bunch of different voices. So one goal, I know goal is not a strategy, but one goal
Yeah.
that we have had is to grow that group and be more inclusive, so that leads to more strategies like empowering people and providing them the tools that they need to accomplish their goals. For example, there was a town hall that the residents led and organized, and we rather than taking the role of making it our town hall, we decided to give them the tools that they need to be successful with that. And I think that was very successful because there were over 200 people attended,
Yeah.
and that's a very large number. Probably one of the biggest ones that I've been a part of, and so yeah, these are all, this brought in a whole new class of people, new cohort of people who, and we want to keep them engaged.
So it's kind of like harnessing the energy that's there
Yeah,
and trying to figure out how to bring them along and help people be aware of the issues and contribute their voice so that better decisions are made that are taking into account all those different perspectives.
yeah, I think it's like, take strategies that help empower your
Yeah.
residents to, and you don't have to agree with what, like
Yeah.
the topic of the town hall is controversial, and our act of empowering them does not necessarily tie us to the values that they share, but it is strengthening the fabric of what
Yeah.
makes our community what it is.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. Anything to add there? I appreciate what I've heard both of you kind of talk about the importance of constituent services, but then like building on that, right?
Yeah.
Bringing those people along and having them be a part of other processes. So thank you for sharing that theme. Okay, we have a few minutes for the last group. Okay, how about any ideas over here that haven't been covered?
We actually took it from like an interpersonal
Okay,
type thing.
yeah,
And even resident, more like, here are some things that we just really like to see in the future. So, Devin mentioned how we like expand Highway 7 as an opportunity. And as you walked out, this one he's about to talk about it, but I think you took some notes on that. Maybe you can hit that.
Yeah, that's just like growth and opportunities along Highway 7, knowing that a lot of the residents ask for example, more sit-down restaurants, business and commercial opportunities and stuff, but recognizing whether it's Highway 7 or it's like things that how do we also balance that with our existing residents who might live next door to this, and so how do you build a development that's also desirable to the neighbor, but is something that the entire community wants.
Yeah,
Aesthetics were brought in this too.
and I think the all kind of talked about wanting to be further ahead of the development process. And the two things that I heard the most, or that people complained about the most during the campaign, was apartments and warehouses. And that's a very normal thing to continue to come in, and there's like a kind of plug and play system that's already been tried and true in our city. So I think what are the strategies that help shift that output? And how do we set an expectation or like a vision as a policy making body, so that we're so far ahead of that when developers, and this is painful to know, when they want to do something, there's almost like this understanding that, hey, you're not the right fit.
instead of being reactive.
Yeah,
proactive.
you're not the right fit,
Yeah.
and we're waiting for this type of project.
Okay.
We're actively seeking this person can do it. And again, I don't know the workings of how all
Sure.
of these have happened, but that's just kind of what came up in the conversation.
Mhm.
And also, there's an element of how do we shift, in some ways, the DNA of Thornton. Thornton grew out of a suburban neighborhood as it became a city, and it wasn't your typical. It was a mining, it wasn't a mining town where it's commercial activity that attracted people to that place, but they built to be from there. It started as a master plan community, and so we then built out in a car-centric, kind of suburban planning, way that has continued for, decades. So how do we shift that DNA or that mindset to now we're creating destinations within our own city that are uniquely Thornton? And they bring people to our own city, they keep revenue in our city.
Yeah.
They help foster small business development, and startups, and this like idea that we can do everything homegrown. So there's a lot there, but that's what we were talking about. And then a lot of that goes into like what zoning looks like, what development, maybe plans or ideas look like, what do we accept? So, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Council's ability and parts of the process to negotiate or facilitate the.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe a bigger, it's a great point, thank you, where we understand that we have the ability to negotiate. More so where we have the land and we understand that there's. You need that to develop,
Okay,
and instead of being always so quick to. Just allow it to happen.
so it's
And so there's a lot there because I'm very much a property rights, like
sure,
free to do what you wanna do on your property and you should do that, but. We're also setting an expectation and vision that people know what we want for the future of our city, and it's not more of the same.
okay, so strategy being kind of what I'm here, kind of to synthesize. Being like or looking at the role of council members and development and. Kind of how you can be effective in that process to like meet a common vision of what the community should look like. So strategy is supporting that.
So an example,
Okay.
like a concrete example would be. We're all familiar with Old East Lake. It's
Yeah.
Old East Lake right now there. Which is a city owned property still. If I had to say. I spoke to 100 people. 98 of them were like, yes, we need to do something with this property. 2 of them were like, I'm fine with the rest of it.
Yeah.
To help facilitate, to push forward this idea of destination. Uniquely Thornton thing. That helps generate and catalyze things in the area.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and I think like tomorrow's strategic plan exercise would be an awesome opportunity to like bring those project ideas forward. So, yeah. Awesome. Well, Lauren, before we kind of take a pause for our break, did you want to highlight any themes you heard or?
I think let's go ahead and take a break. We'll talk about it in our conversation with city manager.
Okay, great. So we've got a break until about 4 minutes, and we'll come back up for our last session. Welcome to my fake podcast featuring
Story time with Tansy.
yes. Featuring city manager Tansy Hayward, welcome. So we're just gonna dive right in and start by talking about your governing body, like they're not sitting right here. Something that really struck me from the day's activities is just lots of voices of them expressing that this is hard work. And maybe this is hyperbolic, but I'll use the term some psychological warfare of how they are grappling with all the influences that they have coming at them to do their work. I also, in that conversation, heard some really nice compliments for you and the staff team, particularly for how you have helped the new folks acclimate to the role. So I just wanted to give space to let you respond to that a little bit, how you see the challenges of that role and maybe how you and the team are trying to respond at the staff level to support them with really the hard pieces of this work.
Thank you. So first, I just want to clarify here that none of this is scripted and I have no idea what that is. This is intentionally, so those that were here last year, I had sort of some planned themes and planned remarks. This is purposely different, so so I'm gonna take 1 second here.
And I'm gonna give you that second by adding
you all get to listen for a minute, and we are also at some point gonna like break the third wall here and bring you into the conversation, so just be ready for that.
Yeah, so, I think some of this is what's our individual and collective thoughts about team and what makes good teams, like, right? And so I think to a person, everybody would say more diversity of idea, skills, thought on a team makes a team stronger. Like we all kind of generally philosophically know that. There's lots of research, I think, that shows that that is the case. I think the flip side of that is sometimes the reality of being on a team is challenging. And city councils are kind of a unique kind of team, like, I think, in terms of, ultimately, if you've come up, if you're playing basketball, you're all showing up for the same reason on a basketball team. You didn't all necessarily show up for the same reason to be on this team, which, in one way, again, adds that idea of the diversity in the team, and in theory should strengthen the team, but I think does sometimes also challenge, the sense of dynamic. I really like the idea of the different cats and the competing values. And, one of the things that just, and I wasn't keeping tracking on this, but I think probably the other Strive team it seemed to me, just sort of generally hearing the conversation, that generally when, you reflected on your sort of go-to value in most cases, there were a lot of individuals that really gravitated to this customer service representation value. And then there were a number of people that went to this vision, big thinker, future focus. I think there was one person that lived in the space of trying to reconcile those two things, but most of you kind of went to one of those or the other. And, and some of you have heard me say individually and collectively, like you each define what success looks like for you on your own. Certainly we care about a team and we want to work together as a team, but ultimately you all kind of frame your own idea of what success looks like for you in relationship to your goals here and your relationship with the constituent. But I do think, inherently, when you think about coming together as a group and understanding a common value, probably two of the bigger values. I mean, I think if John Alvandian was sitting here, who is a hero of mine, have to admit, he would probably say two of the bigger values that are tricky to reconcile is that customer service representative and that future big, trustee role. Those, ultimately, if you look at the same set of facts through those two different perspectives, you could come to pretty vastly different ideas about what the right answer is. And so, I think that does create, from a value set, as a team, thinking about we bring different perspectives, playing off of our strengths, is probably a bigger challenge in terms of challenging, from a personal accountability perspective. I really value thinking about the future. I know this individual really values thinking about, the perspectives and needs of their constituents today. There's more work, I think, actually from a personal perspective to really see the other person in that. I do talk about lots finding the both and. Finding the both and can be more challenging when those value sets really, take you in pretty divergent areas. So, in terms of bringing back to the question of, what's the role of the staff, and something I've worked really hard, and so has every other staff member in this room, and I hope the council, those that have been on the council see it happening, is
talking about the work, talking about our recommendation, talking about the options, recognizing that there are competing values at play. I think one of the things, earlier that I think Lauren said is sometimes there's not a specific right answer. There's an answer that has consequences. And there's another answer that has other consequences. And the decision of which consequences you're going to accept really comes down to a question of values. And so, I think hopefully over time, we are all collectively having a conversation about values. And, certainly as a coach to the staff, that's not our lane, necessarily the decision on values. That's uniquely the role of the council. Now we can understand those values, we can help try to understand the implications of those values. But I think that's where we're a partnership in terms of understanding the options and weighing through those values.
Right. And we introduced this framework, we hope to give you all some common language you can use, to the mayor's point, when you're having these value clashes, that it doesn't become personal, that you can kind of say to each other, seems like you're coming at this from a customer service perspective, and I'm kind of thinking of it more from a big picture thinker perspective, and let's kind of rumble through that instead of we're mad at each other and it's a disagreement. I want to drill down more on this notion of customer service. I was really intrigued with the way I think this Councilmember Russell talked about kind of was celebrating as a victory how well you work as a team to deal with customer service issues that come in. And sharing the carrying of the load and making sure those get handled and processed in the way that they need to get responses. And I really picked up on that because I recall that was a pain point last year when we were here, and something that you noticed as a new city manager and trying to perfect that process of how issues get from customers to council to staff and get responded to, and information gets back to council, and that whole feedback loop. So spoiler alert, I'm going to ask your council members how that's working for them, but I want to give you a chance to reflect on the last year changes or improvements that you've made and how that process is working from the staff perspective.
Yeah, I mean, it's insane we were sitting here a year ago. That doesn't seem that long ago. And I think some of that reflection of me a year ago, actually, I think this is a mixed story a little bit. Frankly, I think, some of my reflection last year being brand new into this organization and being in other organizations is ultimately, I think more of the time and effort of this council is in that constituent context of managing service requests back and forward. And I think, my reaction last year seeing that is, wow, you all are spending a lot of time and energy, bringing things into the system and back and getting lots of information. I get those emails too, and sometimes you're getting dozens of emails, stacking up with these one-off customer service things. And so I think my observation last year was, we could do things differently than that, to shift more of that role into systems and staff and, off of the, out of the horizon of council members. And I think what I heard from council members last year is that we like that. We like seeing the rhythm, we like seeing the responses. That is a priority for how we want to spend time as council members. And so, fundamentally, that system, we have other systems outside of our system that allow people to come in more directly through the Mozilla app or directly to staff. And I think, some council members really reinforce the CAR and encouraging constituents to come to them so that, the council member can serve in that role as customer service representative. I think other council members really encourage constituency, those other more staff driven or systematic kinds of things. So, I think this is a little bit of a choose your own adventure. I think different people in the room are approaching that differently. I do think from a staff perspective, and I think we're gonna get better in the city manager's office, it does create a little of bottleneck of everything coming into the centralized point in the city manager's office. And then having to be fed out and then come back in and then come out. And so, I think there is some frustration, I know in the council just about the level of service there. And some of that is, we don't have any dedicated staffing in our office really, to manage that pinch point in there. So, I think in the future, hopefully, if that is, I do not think right now it is super sustainable as we grow and that traffic continues up. Everybody I think most everybody in the room knows, one of the things in the organizational review long-term is potentially a dedicated position to customer service. Because I do think to some degree, we've got a system with expectations that we don't actually have resources to support at this particular point in time. So, and I think, again, I think probably that conversation last year and some of what we're seeing again reflects different level of motivation and interest in that, individual customer service sort of function as, the council members feeling that you're almost like an ombudsman, trying to manage those things through. Now, clearly, this is the smallest city I've worked in, and just, in some of the other dynamics. Council, not to say that there isn't any of that, I just think that is a more of a maybe historical value of the role that council members play in Thornton than might be in other places.
So we don't have to spend a lot of time. I know this is kind of like a macro issue, but since customer service has been kind of a thread throughout the day, I want to just give council a chance to respond to what you're hearing, kind of what's working for you. And especially for new council members who are coming into this for the first time, maybe this is the first time you're hearing that there are options about how you process these things, and staff has gone one direction based on the feedback they got last year. Just wondering if anybody has any other thoughts or feedback that Nancy can take in her advisement. Yeah.
I've appreciated it, obviously, because it's my point from earlier. One thing that I think that the staff does above and beyond, it's just being available to talk to council, because there's a lot that we just don't know. We don't work for the city in the day-to-day operations, so maybe some of the things that we send in are overly ambitious, maybe they're just too vague and it doesn't help them get to the resolution. But I've had no real issue with, I'll use Adam as an example. If I have an issue, send it off, he comes back with an email, and then we have a talk on the phone. And I think the conversation goes a lot further than just an email sometimes, because through that conversation, the questions are different outcomes of solutions. So it's a nice touch, know that, whatever the issue is, it's not just an email back. There's the opportunity to discuss it more, dig in, and then really have the knowledge to be able to give that back to the resident. And you're educated in that process instead of just forwarding an email. They may not understand acronyms or things, but there's some effort that is required on our end. But that is better explained through the ability to have good communication. So I know we're supposed to direct, everything through the city manager, but I also feel like they are my colleagues too, and I want to have a friendship and a relationship with staff. And there's boundaries to respect there, but that's honestly how you gain my trust. Is just knowing that there's somebody I can call, and it's not a huge effort for people to do that, but it's meaningful, I think. So I like that. I mean, Adam's a great person in that regard. Like I said, just positive feedback. He's always available to take a phone call, walk me through something with a higher level of explanation.
and it's beneficial to me when I speak.
Councilmember Salazar, I saw your head nodding like out of the corner of my eye. Any thoughts you want to add? Just did it. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to agree with Councilmember Russell, I think that the staff is extremely knowledgeable and great for us as a resource. I think one of the things that is a pain point for residents, not so much as much as us, is that and hopefully this will help with the org change stuff, is that a lot of times people don't know who to reach out to. There's the way that our structure stuff is in place is, if you're like, oh, I need to talk about business development, well, are you talking to Adam, or are you talking about who exactly is there just to be that liaison between everybody? And I think CAR helps with that, but again, I think that causes more of that bottleneck to, well, then we're trying to push everything back out to you to be like, okay, well, let's go back over here and refocus all those areas. Instead of just going, hey, you should go talk to this person over here to make sure everything's settled out and quick and easy. For that reason, I don't utilize CAR a lot when people ask me. I typically use the My Thornton app if they have questions or anything's going on, because that way they can utilize that instead of push everything through.
Yeah,
Yeah, I want, piggyback on Councilmember Russell and some of Bert's comments as well, we have great staff here, and got to know the staff, over my years residing here, and building those relationships, that person being where I'm at now, just to be a better member of the community, and I look, and I know that TNT like say, well, we're your bosses. I don't, on a personal note, partners. I'm a partner. You all. We have to work together. You all have more knowledge than I do. And it's imperative as our city grows to keep team on that track. If I look at working with this partnership, not telling you what to do or telling someone else in staff what to do. That's because the only way we're going to succeed is working together. And I value the friendships I've earned on staff very highly. I do not take it for granted. So it is a partnership for me. It's to work, and that's how I look at it. I know you have to call us council member. That's fine. I mean, I'm not gonna correct because that's, but still, I have equal respect for you all as well.
Any thoughts?
I'll say I really value the CAR system so far, last few months, and I think Erica's done a great job. Double, dutying it up to make that happen, and it's been good for me to have because what I've been loving about some of these cards that I've sent in is that I'm really learning by doing that. I love getting an email back, and I've been so impressed by the staff and how thorough they are in their responses. Super educational for me, and now I have that tucked away for next time. Something up with me is staff that I can go to directly to make it more streamlined. But then of course the residents do appreciate just work, and actually getting answers, even though they might not like the answer, but they at least know somebody took the time to respond, and it just makes the staff look so good for them.
So, okay, new question. I loved what Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Ayala said on behalf of the group from the last exercise about it's easy to focus on the things we need to fix, but there's so much that's going right, and taking time to celebrate, which made me think about your citizen satisfaction survey that you all got the report on just a couple weeks ago, which was phenomenal. I mean, you had really incredible results compared to your benchmarking peers. So I wanted you to reflect, Nancy, on anything that's stood out to you and the staff team from that citizen satisfaction survey results that you all are thinking about as you're moving into this implementation phase with your strategic plan.
Thanks for the question. The first thing that, I think to recognize, and hopefully we're gonna be working on some internal communication actually with the staff to make sure that the staff can see those results, because, results that good really come from lots of individual acts of judgment over, repetitive interactions with citizens. I mean, so, that this suggests, not just like they have some outlier good performing groups, sort of across the board. You know, we've got, you know, people that generally are meeting people's expectations, so. You know, just recognizing that, you know, ultimately, I think it's really hard in, you know, for city managers and for council members. You know, we go to a conference and you see a shiny new technology, or you see, you know, whatever cool process or project that, you know, some city did, and I talk, I'll call it, you know, a shiny penny is still only worth 1 cent, and so, you know, we can change something shiny that seems cool. But the thing that really usually makes the difference is every one of our staff members feeling empowered to do good work. And frankly, you know, the whole staff team making small incremental changes to the work they're doing every day is gonna have a bigger, you know, impact in the city than any sort of, you know, shiny project. And, you know, that's one of the things that I love about the strategic plan is it, you know, disperses and empowers across a broad base of employees, an opportunity for them to see the objectives that you've identified and to align their efforts in that way. So one, you know, from a citizen satisfaction survey, you know, I feel some responsibility to really reinforce to our employees that, you know, ultimately they're the ones, you know, producing those results that people are responding to and seeing there. You know, the flip side of that is how do we not get complacent, you know, that, you know, ultimately, you know, I think about the services that we provide as sort of like, we make sure no matter what's going on in your own family life or your own, you know, income piece, you know, we're guaranteeing some level of standard of living that everybody in our community gets to enjoy across the board. And, you know, I think all of us want to move that up as far as we can within the resources that we have are, and clearly that, you know, there's a limit to that. And so, you know, I do think, you know, the flip side risk is to sort of go, we're already doing great, like, you know, we're beating the pants off of everybody else in the region across the country, and I think the question is, okay, but how do we continue to future proof? How do we reach those, you know, needs that we still don't have, we still haven't met? And then, you know, ultimately, and, you know, we talked about this a lot last year, and, you know, this is, I guess this is maybe the question you're thinking about this is in the future is, you know, Thornton has been in a lucky position where we've been able to add programs and add resources to respond to new emerging needs. And that may not always be the case. You know, we may reach a point where the financial realities don't allow us to add the same number of new firefighters or new police officers or new park staff. And then the question is, you know, how do we preserve these great services and continue to innovate and grow potentially without the same, you know, financial ability? And that's kind of a different skill set to sort of, you know, how do we be scrappy and sort of innovate within our means? You know, I agree with the idea about telling our story. I think Rob sent out last night or the night before some of the open forum, you know, comments about either people that think we're doing a great job telling our story, and others, you know, there's always a broad suite of things there. I know there was some discussion in a small group I was in about community engagement. I think we do intend to be more purposeful about engagement when we go forward. And that the last is, I think, you know, some of the areas that now are priorities, you know, that the important satisfaction, you might remember when ETC talks about, here are the things that float to the table where, you know, maybe our satisfaction levels are relatively lower, but the importance level is really high. You know, the reality is we've kind of already hit the ball out of the park on some of the stuff that's kind of easy to move the ball on. And some of those 5 that, you know, rose to the top are things that are actually really challenging. They have more competing values, they have more financial resource impacts. They are things that inherently, you know,
I always say, you can't compare the satisfaction with code enforcement with fire. You said nobody dresses up to be a code enforcement officer for Halloween. That there is a little bit of, we've got some societal sort of influences in the way that we see different kinds of services. And so I actually think if we want to move the needle on things like congestion and code enforcement and infrastructure, I do think it's gonna take some creativity about what's the storytelling, what's the community capacity, what's the partnership, to move the needle on those things, because ultimately they are hard. They are hard in terms of those issues are so dispersed. And so resourcing them in a way that everybody kind of feels and sees in a very personal way is a little more challenging in that regard.
Great. We are now the last thing standing between these folks and a break and some dinner. So I'm gonna wind us down. One last question that's kind of pivoting toward tomorrow. Tomorrow, we are creating an opportunity for the council members to really get to dig in deeper to the strategic plan that started last year and put their influence on the goals, the objectives, the strategies that are starting to come together at the staff level. What advice do you want to give to the council for what they should be reflecting on and thinking about this evening to help them come prepared for that work tomorrow?
Okay. So I'll start with a thank you for the staff. The strategic planning process has been an incredibly empowering process for the staff. And part of the reason is they have felt a level of partnership with the council that for some employees, I think they hadn't felt for a little while. And so thank you for the council of, showing up in a really supportive partner kind of focus way on that. So, ultimately at this point, I'm gonna say two things. This is it's a 5-year plan, and there are 65 actions contemplated in that. And so I'm gonna say both, we need your patience and we need your drive. And so I think one of the things tomorrow that you can help us with is, what are those things that we really need to push on the gas on with the, really short-term focus and results. And that can't be 65 actions. And so, there is a little bit that, again, we're trying to be really deliberative and have everybody go together and do this work in a way that's systematic and sustainable over the long term. And that takes some time. At the same time, we definitely want to know, what are those things that really, lift the table that you think really are most pertinent, are the highest priority, that have the highest return on investment in the short term. And so, I think that's one of the ways that you can be helpful as we get into these work plans, that we don't end up with staff work that is misaligned with your priorities and expectations. The other piece is one of the things that the way I've talked about this exercise tomorrow is, now we're at the point of sink or swim. Like, we've got these, different ideas that are, some of them pretty specific, some of them are pretty broad. And we've got staff teams now, putting wheels on the car, and painting the car, I guess. And so, one of the things that would be a shame is, ultimately, the action says, cook dinner for Thursday night. And our staff worked really hard on a pasta dish with meatballs and tomato, and you all show up and you say, look, I'm gluten-free and vegan. And I expected tofu stir fry,
And we've done, we've done a whole bunch of work, and so one of the things is helpful to know, are there key things that, ultimately would be the difference for you between being successful in some of these initiatives and not being successful? And here's the caveat I would say on that. You might have something that you say we will not be successful unless we have tofu stir fry. And we may have no tofu. And I have to come back and say, I'm sorry, tofu stir fry was not in the cards, but we got you that, spaghetti and meatballs was not what you expected. And so, we were able to do, shrimp and mushrooms. And so, so we want that kind of feedback from you to make sure that, we're setting up our planning teams in the best possible position to have an idea of what alignment looks like with you all. The other piece, we're in a kind of a transition point here. Council's been very involved in the strategic plan. You've been the architects, you have really frequent touch points, in terms of building that policy framework that is the strategic plan. And we're almost at a pivot point if you were to think about, the budget. Budget is a huge policy tool. You all put that in place. It sets the mandate for the work that we are going to do. And then the staff kind of goes and does it. And we're at that handoff now in the strategic plan that, this is hardening in terms of, policy direction. And then we're going to start to operationalize that. I don't want the council to feel like a sense of loss or mourning that, it's going away. It's just pivoting into a new kind of life cycle in terms of operational, and similar like we do on the budget, we do check-ins to sort of say, here we are, here's where we are, here's where we're going. We'll be kind of shifting. So I think this to some degree is sort of that last phase to get ready to really do a pretty aggressive baton handoff to the staff teams that, again, hopefully will put more life into these ideas, that you've helped us to craft, for the future of our city.
Okay, we are gonna leave it there. Your homework for tonight is to break bread and enjoy more time together, and in that process be reflecting on what teams has talked about and what for you is gonna be the best meal. Is it tofu stir fry? Something else? We are convening again in the morning at 8 a.m. 8 a.m. there will be breakfast. We will start the program promptly at 9 a.m. So come whenever between 8 and 9 works for you for some more fellowship, but we will get started right in. Bob or Joanna, are there instructions for this evening you were there with them?
Yeah, thank you. So dinner is at 7:30. We will have a shuttle that I think we're opening blinds. The shuttle will pick us up at 7 o'clock at the awning, kind of where you checked in. So please be there at 7 o'clock to catch the shuttle up to Twin Owls. Twin Owls, only two. And so we'll have a semi-private area and order off the menu and have a nice meal together. I'd really encourage. The one we had last year was I thought really enjoyable, being able to see, just from my perspective, the council engage at a different level, a more human level. And so would encourage you to build on that. Particularly, we've got new folks that we want to get to know, and maybe existing relationships that we want to build upon. So really encourage you to, the meals, it's a meal, that's all it is, something more, but it's also really an opportunity for some fellowship and relationship building. So I encourage you all to do that. We all will.
Thank you.
That's a wrap. That's not good. Yeah.